Welcome, Spartans, to Podcast Evolved, your home for Halo. I am your host, Aaron, and with me today we've got Colin.
Hey there.
And we've got David.
Hello, everybody.
And this week continues our new series of Infinite Impressions. We are on episode 5, and this week we are giving you Campaign Spoilers Part 2, so be warned.
Yes.
There will be spoilers.
That's right. It's in the title.
Yes. We are covering from Mission 9 all the way up to the end at Mission 15, and we will also, at the very, very end, we will discuss the legendary ending, so we will give you fair warning in case, like David, you're going to want to jump out before that, because you're saving yourself to do it yourself.
Better believe it.
Respect.
So we're going to be doing all of that, and our overall impressions of everything Halo Infinite. This will be more of a thoughts on the story and general gameplay stuff. If you want a blow-by-blow of every mission, it will be a mission debrief specific thing you're going to be watching out for.
Join us. Coming soon.
Because Oren and David managed to talk for almost an hour and 40 minutes the last day on the spoilers part 1.
Yeah, it was pretty ridiculous. We were saying that, like, could you imagine if there was a third person here or a fourth person and we were trying to do this? Way too many missions in one episode.
Well, we'll find out how this goes.
We probably would have ended up having to split it like 5 missions an episode or something. It would have got far too crazy. All right. Before we get into all of our missions, we'll do the socials. So, if you're new to the show, welcome to Podcast Evolved. We host a variety of shows. This is our main show. We cover things like Infinite Impressions. We also used to do things like the Road to Infinite and the character dossiers. The Road to Infinite, thankfully, is dead. The character dossiers may have to come back because we have a few characters now. So we may have to cover a few of those sometime. We also host a number of other shows. We've got Mission Debrief, Builds with Blocks, Halo Book Club, and Halo Headlines. We also have a partnership with HCS Pro Talk. You can go over there and listen to Josh and Will as they cover all things in the competitive world of Halo. I believe they're not long back from the... is it the first Halo Infinite competitive?
Yeah, Raleigh. Yeah, they came back.
I saw the episode come up in my feed. I haven't got round to listening to it yet.
Yeah, it's almost 3 hours long. It's crazy.
Nice. Yeah, I've been listening to them a lot lately. They're real good.
Once I get Christmas over me, I'll have a chance to listen to things again. I'm very behind at the minute. You can learn more about all of our shows if you go over to the website. That's halopodcastevolve.com. And if you're already a fan, we would like to ask you to take a moment to go and rate us and leave a review on your podcast service of choice, because we appreciate all of the feedback. And also, we'd like to take a minute to thank all of our patrons for their continued support. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, peeps.
You guys are awesome.
Thank you.
If you go over to patreon.com/Halo Podcast Evolved, you can see what rewards and exclusive content is available for you as a patron. There are things such as soundtracks, there is merch, there is a special channel in the Discord where you can harass us. There are lots of things you can go and do. And also, finally, if you get a chance, we would like to encourage all of our listeners to support us through Audible. If you go to audibletrial.com/podcast evolved, you can start a free trial with Audible today, and that will help us out on the show. And you will have access to all of the Halo books, which there is a new one coming out in a few months. It got pushed back slightly, didn't it? We're back to May now.
There's a little tie-in, I believe. Well, a big tie-in with Infinite.
Quite a big tie-in from the sounds of it. I believe certain characters in the audio logs are relevant to it, so I'm looking forward to getting my hands on that. So yes, go over to audibletrial.com/podcast evolved and you can start a trial today. Also, honourable mention to the Expanse novels, because the last novel in that series just came out and there isn't a bad book among them, so go and have a listen.
I need to get into those.
Yeah, guys, are we alright to skip last week in Halo in case this turns out to be a monster podcast? Will we just dive straight into Infinite Impressions? Or
yeah.
Okay, who's taking us into the start of this?
Let me just do a disclaimer really quick, though, because I feel like the thing that I did in last week in Halo was I went around and did all the audio logs, and we're mostly up to date on those, have them all kind of in mind, but we're going to cover those separately. So, like, this show is going to be all about just like the main campaign, what's presented to us, and us talking about it, with the knowledge of the audio logs. But we'll cover those stories more thoroughly separately.
There is actually a surprising amount of audio log. I pulled up a video on YouTube to listen to all of them, and I think it's about an hour and 25 minutes.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
Of audio log between all of them, so like it's quite a substantial amount of story and stuff to listen to there.
I don't know about you guys. I kind of had said to Oren, like, you guys, did you like the audio logs? I'm kind of hit and miss on some of them.
I do. So I just listening to them before the recording here, they do flesh out quite a bit. That, but it's a lot of extra stuff. But it's a lot of stuff that you're like, oh yeah, okay, that makes sense how that folds in, and knowing that there's other things going on in the world. But again, it's a lot of it is extra. But there's a couple things here and there that are like extra details, like the names of certain races, like that stuff is presented in those, and so it's helpful in some spots. In other spots, it's more just kind of world building.
It does feel occasionally like they rely on them a little too much for backstory stuff, because that was part of the impression I got. Like when you're listening to the ones from the Infinity and you're sort of getting the backstory for what happened in the battle that you drop into at the start, things like that, you're hearing what happened to characters. You get the four audio files that like unlock as you progress the game, and you don't have to find them, the ones with Halsey, and they're kind of like, it's filling in bits and pieces, so I didn't mind them, but I thought they were all fairly well made and put together. Like that end of things, like I thought they were all pretty good sounding.
Oh yeah, they sound great. I feel like they do a couple different things, and some of them like level set for newcomers. Like, here's some important things you need to know. And then a lot of them talk about, like, when you're going through the campaign and you're asking yourself, well, what about this? And where's this? And when did this happen? Then you turn into the audio logs to get a lot of those questions kind of answered, whereas they're not pertinent to the immediate story that is being told as you're, wielding your weapon going through as chief.
I feel like the one that stood out to me specifically was you're listening to one of the Infinity ones, and it just has a throwaway line about how, oh, it was so convenient that Blue Team was available when they were to send on this other important mission. You're like, okay, that's why Blue Team are nowhere to be seen, but like it's a little irritating.
They mention Locke, they mention Palmer, they kind of mention a couple other pieces. They more or less say nobody else is here right now. It's just Chiefy Boy and the Vanished, and then a couple other Spartans sprinkled on the ring.
And Lasky, like that sounded like it. Everyone else wasn't there. I thought, like, not to get too far into this before we start talking, but I thought it was interesting that there's no mention of Roland whatsoever anywhere. No one even brings him up at all.
Maybe we'll find out in the Rubicon Protocol by Kelly Gay.
Ooh, maybe.
Possibly. All right, who's taking us into the start of this?
I will. So, last week, what we did with Oren, we did the part 1 of the Spoilercasts. So we covered pretty much the prologue, or the lack thereof, the intro, the first 8 missions, which is the Warship Gabrakan to Pelican Down. So there's a whole bunch of stuff happening in there. If you're listening to this, you've already played them. And if you're listening to this, you've probably already listened to that episode. So I won't go into too much detail because obviously we've got a lot to do today. So go check that out. If you haven't listened to that episode before this one, you probably should. Because obviously we will be building off the things that we discussed there. The guys' impressions of the individual missions. So I know you guys, obviously you've finished the game, you've got to them. How were you on the first half of the game? Are you pretty hot on it? Are you pretty good? Are you coming into the second half feeling pretty high?
So far, I quite enjoyed the first half. Like, I feel like the missions have been fairly solid. You get your traditional first 2 missions, then you get out onto the surface. The first obstacle I hit was a Chaklock in that tower. He can go and suck one as far as I'm concerned. I was...
What difficulty were you on, Aaron?
Heroic for my first run through, and then I had to dial it back down to normal, but at the time I didn't know you could exit your save, change the difficulty and reload, so I ended up restarting and wasting my first 2.5 hours. That was also a slight irritation. Once you get out into the open world, I was having a pretty good time. I think it's funny because at the end of Pelican Down, the pilot goes, So how long have I known you now? Like 6 hours, and I looked at the mission timer, I was like, it's been 17, pilot. I've been running around the open world ignoring you for quite some time now.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
At this stage, yeah, no, I'm pretty happy with the first half. I don't think I disliked any of the missions. I realized very quickly that the high value targets were someone that you should hit up quick. Once I got the souped up sentinel beam and found out that the Razorback was an absolute force of destruction, that's been my favourite thing in the open world. Just load up 5 Marines with sentinel beams and drive slowly around the world and make everyone burst into flames.
If you listen to Mission Debrief, I'm a huge fan of the Scorpion, and I didn't spawn in the Scorpion once because the first driving experience I had with the Scorpion wasn't that great, and then after that, it was just give me that Razorback, load me up with the Marines. That thing's so good.
There's a lot about the Scorpion I don't like in this game. The world itself is not built for a Scorpion to be in it. Like all the trees are just like immovable objects, and the tank is so slow.
And no one can sit on the...
And nobody sits on the side tracks. Yeah, that's true, yeah.
I thought, oh, maybe the Marines just aren't doing it. And then I ran up to the side tracks and was like, oh, there's no prompt for me to sit either. And I was like, no, you need that with the tank. You need to have your Marine buddies on the side and on the chain gun.
Yeah, you need those extra hit points.
That was a little bit upsetting. But no, I'm pretty much the same. I think it's either like the Razorback or as we get into the second half and I unlock the Wasp. Like that's how I did most of this.
Colin, how about you? How were you in the first half of the game?
Yeah, I'm really enjoying it. I talked about this on a different show, our Builds with Blocks show, but I did kind of what Oren did and mainlined the story, so I didn't do much exploring. I went off to the side and did a couple things along the way. So the campaign, as it's structured, like I've been resisting just going off and getting lost, even though that's a lot of fun after the campaign. I mainlined it, so it felt very, very Halo from that point, right? Like you're going from spot to spot, from mission to mission, and all of the abilities, the weapons, everything feels very good. So I'm overall very happy, and the story that's being presented, for us lore lovers, I feel like it's well done. There's enough hidden, there's enough to uncover, there's enough in your face that it's hitting me, positively for the most part, on all cylinders. So I'm very happy at this point after the Pelican Down mission and the seeing of that demo, right? The E3 demo. You're like, oh, I know this. And then coming to the end of that and realizing, okay, now I got a lot more stuff to uncover here. Like I feel like the length is good. The pacing is pretty solid. But yeah, overall happy with everything I've played up to this point.
Because the reason why I asked, because the first mission we're going to talk about today is the sequence, and I got this mixed in my brain because I always called it the beacons, because that's what you're doing in this mission is going to the beacons, and this was probably my favorite mission, I think, in the game, because it's pretty much just Halo, the open world, the mission, the game. You've got 4 beacons, which are the structures that pulse off these lights. They're in Halo CE. They're classic Halo Forerunner structure, and this mission for me is where I think I spent almost the bulk of my game time. And my first playthrough was on normal. It was about 30, almost 40 hours I think I played. Because I was trying to do almost everything. I was exploring constantly. I was getting everything, all the side missions. And when I got here, it was just like, oh, this is beautiful. Like I love that each beacon is different. It has like slightly different encounters and they kind of ramp up as you go through. I mean, obviously you can take them in whatever order you want.
It's funny because everything I set up until now, like everything's good, pacing's good, all that, I golden pathed it up to this point. And when I hit this mission specifically, that's when I was like, oh.
I could see why some people would think that.
Right, because I hadn't been playing it like you.
If you didn't have fobs unlocked, if you didn't have aerial vehicles, and I don't think I did until I got here. Like this is where I did the bulk of my resource gathering. But like it could definitely, like, let's say when I was playing through I was going for like a speed run through on easy to get the achievement, and like when I got here I had maybe 2 fobs and I was like, oh crap, I now have to slog my way over and get to these beacons, which are pretty spaced out like over the map.
I actually forgot that this was a mission because I spent so long doing all of the open world stuff that I was looking back through this as we were getting ready, and I was like, the sequence, and I pulled up a playthrough and I was watching, and I was going like, da, 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 da. I was like, oh, that's a mission, that's right, because I went through, I did the open world, I got all the fobs, I took out the big gate facility. I think by the time I finished my game, the only thing I forgot to do was there is a facility in that part of the open world where they're digging up the rings. And that was the only thing I had forgotten because I was, I think, one Spartan upgrade away from having all my abilities maxed out. So that was the only thing I forgot to do by the time I went into the final mission. So I had totally forgotten. But the thing I like about this is, to get into it a little bit, it's the little cutscene we get with Chief and the weapon every time they like resequence one of the beacons. When they every time you go there, he plops her down on the pedestal, and then you zoom out to third person, and then you have your little interaction. And like, the first one's fine, the second one she's a bit paranoid, she feels like she's being watched. The third one's a little bit iffy, and then in the fourth one, where she's like having a little bit of trouble.
Oh man, the fourth one's dark. That took a turn for me where I was like, oh man, I didn't think this would happen.
No, I wasn't expecting it either, because you're there and she's having difficulties, and Chief is just immediately gearing up on the delete button. You're like, Chief, you okay there, buddy? It's like he was just straight in there. Also, I love that in these cutscenes, you carry the weapon you had equipped.
Yeah, they finally fixed Halo, guys. They fixed it.
It's so good. I had a gravity hammer on me in that cutscene when he's like looking for what's in the room with him, and I'm like, this just looks so funny.
Is he wielding it with two hands?
Yeah, he has the hammer. He's ready to go. It's funny because, do you know the first time I watched a video, one of the playthroughs I saw in the mission where the Harbinger smashes you, through the wall and like outside, the guy that was playing that mission had the rocket launcher. So Chief is, instead of Chief like looking around pointing his, I think I had a BR at the time, it's Chief like one-handed flying through the air holding his rocket launcher, and then he leaps up and he's just like scanning the horizon with it. It's so good. I really do appreciate that. I had, in one of the other cutscenes, I had an energy sword as well, so it looked really out of place. It's just like Chief there ready to pounce.
That's good that they put the animations in there, though, that it's not just generic weapon stance.
That would be the thing that always killed me in like Halo 3, was every cutscene you almost always went back to the assault rifle, and then you started the next mission and you were like, oh, I've got the assault rifle again. Yay.
I imagine that's a lot of work too.
With the amount of weapons that they have in the campaign and the potential that you could have any one of them at any given time, it was pretty cool. So the beats of this mission are pretty much, you're getting the bits of the sequence code that Cortana needs to open up the spire, and she's kind of piecing together from these 4 beacons. So you're just traveling, the weapon is piecing them together from the 4 kind of beacons. Kind of, there's an escalation. The cutscene before this was the Harbinger and Escarum talking back and forth, and her figuring out that there's something helping the Master Chief, and she kind of thinks it's something that's vulnerable, so she's like really intrigued by what the weapon actually is. So we're kind of going, oh, what the hell's happening here? So that sequence, where Chief has his like deactivation protocol in place and like ready to delete the weapon, I was not expecting the game to take a turn like this. And it was kind of subtly hinting at that, like with some of the prompts that were coming up in other cutscenes. You could see the red flag. Yeah,
the red flag thing. And it shows that Chief, obviously he's unsure, right? He's like not 100% sure if he can trust her. And I think what set it off for him was when she said in one of the 4, where it's like, oh, there's something here. Like something's, I forget exactly what she says, but she feels like she's being watched or something else is being involved. And that's like, oh, where he's like, oh, something's going on here.
Definitely. So that was really good. So the end of this mission, pretty much you gather the 4 pieces. You almost delete, but don't delete her. And then you return to the command spire. That's a cool little fight here where all the forces build up at the gate. And they conveniently place a fob right in front of it. So you can kind of call in all the Marines that you need to. And like Aaron says, the correct way to play this game is with a Razorback full of Marines with heavy weapons. So you bring those bad boys down, and like that's so much fun. Also, the very beginning of this mission is the first introduction of the Banshees. So that was kind of cool. Obviously, you get the grapple hook to play around with hijacking them. So I imagine you guys did something similar at the beginning. Did you both try and grab the Banshees?
Oh yeah, that Banshee very deliberately flies straight at you at that first scene. You're like, you come out and she's like, what's that? And it's like, Banshees. And then you just jump onto it. I did that immediately and then flew straight to the top of the spire. That was I think the first thing I did.
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
And then I'm pretty sure I died fairly quickly as I attempted to take out the fob. It was funny though, I was doing like a strafing run on that fob at the top of the hill and I got hijacked by an elite, but as I fell away from the Banshee, I was able to grapple shot it again and get back into it and throw him out to his death.
What I learned pretty quick, and I kind of by accident, if you do the rotates or the flips, that knocks them off. They go flying. So like it stops their hijack, which is pretty cool. It kind of cancels out their animation and you can kind of like do the kind of acrobatics.
I did not know that. Now that you've said it, it makes perfect sense.
Yeah, re-hijacking after a hijack, that's pretty dope, Aaron. I hope you recorded that.
Absolutely not. But I can totally figure that out again.
That is the one thing that made this section easier, is getting the Banshee and then like, oh, okay.
I'm sure they did that deliberately as well for like people who just want to leg it and like they don't want to get bogged down with there's a lot of traversal to get across to the 4 beacons. So the fact that it introduces the aerial vehicles now obviously is pretty good and pretty timely. Anything else you want to comment here, or will I move on to the next one?
Just on this mission, you mean?
Yeah, this mission.
I'm trying to think here. Yeah, I think the commentary and the little relationship you're building here, or maybe distrust you're building with the weapon, is well done. But like the combat felt good. You know, again, it was a little tedious for me because I was mainlining it. But I like the variety of each spire too. So they do all little bit different encounters. So you can't do the same thing. Forces you to switch it up, which is good.
It was fun to finally find out what those pulsing towers do. Like, that's one of those things like, oh, okay, that's what these are for.
I don't think it's the first time we've been told what they do. I think we heard about them before in one of the earlier games, I think. Because I want to say it's like Halo 3 when they charge up. There's something, I think we knew something along the lines of what they were for.
Are they related to the hard light spikes that are spokes? Something to do with that?
Something along the lines. They're obviously with communication and with the bringing the ring online. I think it is part of it as well. Because I remember when somebody said that in this game, I was like, oh yeah, I kind of knew that, that's what they were for. But anyway, this mission has a very Halo feel about it, and I kind of love it for that. Very classic. Okay, so the next mission is mission 10. It is the Nexus. So you begin this pretty much with a gravity lift boosting up into the spire, into that big forerunnery spire building. There's a lot of Cortana whispers and kind of background kind of like holograms. Obviously, they learned from Halo 3 with Cortana whispering to you, so it doesn't really interfere in gameplay anymore. You just hear it as you go, which is great. Do you know what I mean? I'm fully happy with that. They didn't learn from their mistake, and they put a gondola into this game. So I actually laughed when I got to the gondola. I was like, I can't believe they put a fucking gondola in this game.
It's the first thing I thought. I was like, oh, David's going to love this.
Oh, God. Yeah. But it's pretty good. There's, I kind of glassed over. The hunters appear for the first time in the game here.
No, this is the second time we see hunters. The first time is at the base of Spire 1. This is the one where they do the sneaky thing where you run down into the room, and if you weren't paying attention, you run in around the corner and you go, oh, fuck hunters. And you go, I have no weapons for hunters. And then there's a scramble to see what's around the room, and you can't shock a hunter with your grapple shot, and you're just like panicking a bit.
Yeah, the hunters are no joke in this game. Like, they are tough.
You can't get behind them. At least I couldn't. Like, I had to face them full on. I'd throw stuff at their face and just hope that I could kill them.
Yeah, you don't face them a lot. Like, you don't encounter a lot of hunters as you go around this game. Like, I feel like I only came across them a handful of times.
There's at least 2 interior non-skippable sections where you have to fight 2 hunters. And then the Spire ones are like, the first time I've seen them, it's kind of easy because they're out in the open and you can literally go and get any weapon you want to come back to them. So it's not too bad. And then if you do the high value target one, you should call in a Scorpion and just slowly roll your way over to them because there's a fob just down the road.
Yeah, I think the other set there's a set that protect Skull over on the little island to the north of the first base. But like they're used pretty sparingly. Like they're not all over the place.
I like that because it kind of makes a big deal when they show up.
Yeah, they are that sort of like mini boss thing, even though they're not a boss. Well, apart from the high value target ones.
Well, I think it's that's a good point to bring this up. Is like there's good variety, and I probably mentioned this before, and kind of how I feel about the game. But the game feels like it throws different enemies at you at the right time, so it doesn't all feel monotonous. Like the gondola ride is a bunch of sentinels, right? It's like I haven't had like a sentinel section, but this is your sentinel section, and you meet them along the way, but it's not just like a bunch of them all at once. And then you have hunters to switch it up. Then I like how they have skirmishers to mix things up, and then the skimmer. So like there really is good encounter variety throughout the entire game.
There is for sure. Oren puts it down there. I kind of thought there's a shoot jump where where everybody falls in love with the weapon. Because she absolutely loves shooting down these little shoot things from Halo 2. Yeah, you know what I mean. She's like, "Woo!" That was fun. So that was way unexpected. But I do like how it shows like how young this AI is really when you think about it, and how naive she is.
It's very reminiscent of. It reminded me of Halo Wars and Jerome and Isabel, because it's the same thing. Jerome dives out of the ship back down to the Ark, and she lets out this like squeal and woohoos as she goes. So it's that same sort of like fun, happy AI.
It's a good tone piece, I think, for setting this character. And obviously, Chief is super sad in this game, and she's pretty happy about how things are going. She's a plucky character, which I kind of like. Does pretty good. So there's a bunch of other stuff happening in this mission. It's all interior stuff, interior Forerunner kind of stuff. Lots of holograms. You kind of get the feel of this mission is this spire is the control one linking to all the other spires on the ring. The purpose of the spires and the reformation is to rebuild the ring. That's the whole purpose of them. So you're in this spire now trying to essentially shut them down, find a way to turn it off. That's your whole point. So there's a lot of like interior fighting. There's some kind of good moments throughout it.
It was very Halo 2 for me, like Halo 2 vibes throughout. Again, like you talked about the shoot, but like when I was going through this, like, I had a smile on my face because like this feels exactly like Halo 2.
And there's certain architectures and like small bits of rooms where like, this is exactly like a layout of a ramp and a corner and an area in a previous Halo game. Like it feels like that.
I kept getting those vibes, and when you first go into that big room and all the holograms for the spires show up, I don't know why, but I got very end of Halo 5 vibes, weirdly. When Cortana traps you in the cryptum at the end, but you're fighting in that last big open room and working your way around. I got very vibes of that there. And then you get that, you get more character building with Chief and the weapon there, because when they come into that room and she talks about how beautiful it all is, and Chief's like, "Oh, this is all bad news," and she's like,
yeah, their relationship starts to break down here, where the weapon has picked up upon like Chief's attitude towards her. I mean, there's been small comments throughout the game, obviously, where she's trying to get more information. She doesn't really understand what's going on. Chief is not telling her anything.
No, like, I think she very deliberately says it here at one stage. She's like, "What is it going to take for you to trust me?" And he's like, he hesitates. He goes to say it, and then he goes, "Spire first," and he's back to all business again.
And I like that. I like how they deliver his lines and stuff like that. And I like that she is commenting on the fact that he's ignoring her and not answering her questions a lot of the time, which is pretty interesting. So that all kind of comes to a head a little bit later. So where am I now in the notes? So yes, the weapon, you interact with a pillar here, right? And this is where the weapon gets it's not obviously clear what happens here, right?
This room is the base of the grav lift that you're going to activate. So you go and you get like the 2 seeds, and then I think in between each seed you get like a little cutscene. The first cutscene is like, yeah, it's the end of Halo 5, like slightly redone. And then when you get the second cutscene, she goes to activate the grav lift, and then like the Harbinger's voice comes on and she disappears off the pedestal and then turns like she's weird funky green in the background in pain, and then Chief is just like, "Okay, let's start the delete process." He he doesn't hesitate. I love, I think I called this out before, but his password for the delete protocol
is Samuel, yeah.
Yeah, it's Samuel, because it's red flag and then it's Samuel and it's his call sign, and you're just like, he has not let this go his entire life. This is the most important password and passcode he will ever have to delete the potentially dangerous AI, and it's Samuel.
It's such a great moment. The fact that he does it, I actually couldn't believe he did it. And then when it didn't work, and the weapon is like, what the hell? And I was like, oh shit, you're in trouble. Like I felt like, Chief, you're such a dick. Like you swung and a miss here. It's gonna blow up in your face. And I was just thinking at this stage, oh man, this is where you create the monster you fear. Do you know what I mean? That she is going to lash back. But I loved it. I loved it. Like you kind of broke her, and that was like a big lesson for her in that moment. And then her responses to her afterwards are like all brilliant. Of just like, she is, oh, I'm done with you. Like it's just like a bad breakup. Do you know what I mean? And we're just getting through this car ride so I can get out and not deal with you ever again. It was cool. There was some great dialogue, great back and forward here.
They do a really good job of those interpersonal things, because it's the start of the next mission, actually, is the next cutscene that she has with him. Does anyone want to say anything else before we jump on?
Yeah, she like pops back, and Chief was trying to delete her because he obviously thought the Harbinger had captured her or something had gone wrong. And she pops back, and I have everything I need. I have control. And she shows the thing, and Oren has it written here, the encephalon. So it's the activation index for or something that allows to unlock the endless, right, that the Harbinger's trying to do.
Oh, it is like the command authorization from the monitor that the Harbinger killed. What is this? What was this ring's monitor called?
I know what it is. Like, I remember seeing it before, like when the Harbinger took it. But then, like, the weapon shows up as if, like, now I have it. Isn't this such a great thing? But it never comes into play ever again. And then the Harbinger doesn't seem to even need it anymore. So I got the impression that like there was more supposed to happen here, that was a more significant moment, that not only is she back and okay, but she has this thing that she managed to steal from the Harbinger.
Despondent Pyre,
that's her name. I believe, now, if anyone wants to correct me on this if I'm wrong, but I believe what it was that gave her control of the Spire. That was how the monitor would have control. It was her authorization to control the Spire and repair the Halo. And I think the weapon at one point says that, like, the Harbinger is using it, but she's not using it quite right. So she doesn't have, like, full control of the Spire for a long time. And that's why she wants the weapon, because the weapon is, like, the missing piece of the puzzle to give her full control. So I think that's really what it is. It's not like the activation index for the Halo. It's basically the admin privileges.
Because I felt like it was a key that was already used, and then you pick up after it was used, and it was like, haha, we have it now. And I was like, nobody cares. It's been used. So I kind of didn't really grasp it there at that moment.
Yeah, I think that's all it really is. It's what allows the the reconstitution process for the ring, but like she already kickstarts it at that point, so like it's pointless, but you have it.
Yeah, she mentions that the weapon mentions something about like the Harbinger needed both of them when we're going around to do the all the beacons. She's like, oh, she needs us both to do this.
It's important to note that like after you enter the Spire, this is now the end game. Like there's no getting back to the open world. You're in the missions now till the game finishes. I was kind of waiting for a prompt because every other game in the whole world does that. And this game doesn't. So like if you're at this point and you still want to do some stuff for the end of the game, do it before you jump into the Spire. So that kind of took me off.
You get back. I thought you get back out. Don't you get back out on the road?
You can't fast travel when you're in the road. Yeah, you're on a singular path then. Okay, so the next mission, you pretty much jump into the lift and that's kind of it. But like the weapons activation of the lift is super sassy, so I kind of love that too. I was like, oh, there's your lift. Do you know what I mean? Don't talk to me. That was cool.
That scene, is it at the start of this where she's like in the terminal and she's trying to figure out what happens, and she, what does she say, like, oh, like this is interesting, and Chief's like, what? And she's like, I'm not talking to you.
Yeah. I think that's the next mission, but yeah, that's pretty cool.
Oh, that's the start of the Nexus, isn't it? Or the control spire.
Yeah, so that's where we are now. That's mission 11. We go into the grav lift, and we are now inside the command spire. And then you get a lot of stuff from the Harbinger. She talks to you a lot in this mission. This is where you're kind of building up to, okay, what is she up to? She's obviously trying to rebuild, but it turns out she's not rebuilding the ring. She's rebuilding a specific portion of it. And that there's something more going on for the Harbinger. So pretty much they have the Reformation has begun. So this is the building. And she talks a whole bunch of stuff about they will be found and this kind of crypticness of what's going on and her kind of goal. So you pretty much get in. You're fighting a lot of Sentinels in this mission. There's pretty much two types of Sentinels in this game, right? There's the little smaller ones that have the shock rifles now, and then there's the larger ones.
Yeah, they eventually have shields too, which is kind of cool.
I feel like you either shoot them in the eye or they go kind of haywire and they do like a suicide charge at you.
That's true. Yeah, there's a few of them that do that, yeah.
The shock Sentinels caught me off guard because the first time I encountered them, I got fried and didn't know what was going on. I was like, who is zapping at me? And then I realised it was the Sentinels off in the distance, taking pot shots at me.
So we get to the left. Chief puts the weapon into the console, and this is where the weapon kind of now figures everything out. She has, okay, all the spires are now active. She can see that the Reformation is focusing on a specific area. This is the Asylum Auditorium, but there's no records to it. So I was initially obviously kind of like, okay, guys, you have other names to call things. You don't need to keep going back to older names and bringing them back in. So I was thinking, okay, is this just the map room? Like, is that all we're getting to again? But no, it turns out to be something a little bit different. So it's kind of ominous. All the records are missing. We don't really know what the hell's going on. A weapon is pure sassy here, which is pretty great. So what are we saying? Is there another gondola here? I think there is. No, you have to climb around it, isn't it?
Yeah, you climb up like the side of the energy beam and then you get up above and then you have to get like the power chip and you activate the grav lift and then you go wee.
Yeah, you're kind of you're going through the production area. It's very much like a factory setting where you get the impression that the spires are actually building raw materials to fix the ring, which is pretty cool. So that's all like in effect. So this whole area is pretty cool. I do like how they've changed up the for architecture, which can get a little bit bland, but I like how they changed it in this mission.
Yeah, you feel like you're in like this forge, right? Like it felt hot. You know, you're running around and you're like, why is it hot in here? Why am I sweating? They did a good job of like setting it up and making you feel like this is raw material being forged here and sent out into the world. We got to stop it.
Yeah. So eventually we we get ourselves up into an area called the Observatory, and then Adjuvant Resolution appears again in the Mech Fight 2.0. So I found this hilarious. That I know I haven't talked to you guys about it, but like the monitor with a mech suit is pretty ridiculous.
The first thing, and I don't know if it's quite the right thing I thought of, but all I could think of was GLaDOS and Portal. It's a very like GLaDOS or Wheatley fight where you're like, oh, the little robot that I've been chasing just turned into a big fucking robot and now he's after me.
It's pretty much the exact same fight again, except this time there's a couple of enemies that come in and attack you as well. And the platforms kind of move up and down, and there's kind of like a bit of kind of running around that you have to do.
I like when you're in that outside area. I don't know about the rest of you, but it seemed like the power weapon ammo was like unlimited. Because there's like one power weapon respawn. I was using the rockets to like take out the phantoms, and then it's like this asshole appears again. And it's like, oh, fuck.
That happens a little later, yeah. You don't fight him. Is it that platform? Oh, you do. When you come up to the top of this platform, you've already beaten him. And then there's a few banished at the top level. And yeah, that power ammo box is infinite. Because I went back to it loads with a rocket launcher that you find here to take out the phantoms and stuff.
Did you notice that the power, maybe you guys talked about this in the first one, I forget, but the armor reloads, they have a little meter above them. And so they will run out eventually.
They have a quantity. Yeah, they do.
Which is slick. That way you can't keep going back.
I think I noticed that the first time. If you go to them with like a depleted weapon, it uses up pretty much all of the ammo box. I think it might use up all the ammo box because like if you go to it with a DMR with no ammo, I'm pretty sure that empties the ammo crate.
It does, yeah. And if you have two kinetic weapons and they're both down a good bit, you can empty the box as well, just refilling both. But it seems to like, it focuses on the weapon you have equipped, and then any extra will go into the weapon you don't. So like you might get some, but it doesn't divide it 50-50.
I did notice that. So do we want to talk about this awesome cutscene at the end?
Yeah, so again, you touch another pedestal, and there's a bit of a conversation here then back and forth between Chief and the weapon. So this is where they get to the crux of it, and I think she mentioned it earlier to the pilot what Chief had tried to do, and like the pilot calls him out, and Chief doesn't answer, and then the weapon is like, no, he's just a man of action. He doesn't want to talk to you. He's like, okay, I guess so. So it gets real awkward between all three of them, and then at the end of it, there's a bit of where she's saying that I can deactivate, or does she take? Yeah, I can deactivate the Spire network. And he's like, "Are you sure you want me to do this?" Chief says, "Is it safe?" And he says, "Or you'll delete me, right?" And she just does it and says, "We're done." And the Chief is like, "It's never done."
Yeah, but she's like, "You're going, I'm staying here," and he's like, "No, no." And then the pelican appears, and then Jega attacks, and I love the fact that like, he suddenly appears and starts stabbing the console in the Pelican, and Chief just immediately flings himself off the tower onto the canopy of the Pelican. Like, there's no hesitation at all. He just goes for it.
It was pretty cool. And like, I was initially going, this is the worst assassin ever. How can he not kill this? But then I had totally forgotten that he was sent on a mission to bring Chief in alive. And I was like, why is he not killing this dude? And then it's quickly revealed that like, okay, Chief gets knocked off this Pelican crashes, and Jega has kidnapped the pilot and essentially using him as bait to call in Chief. And that's pretty cool. But I like that immediately, like, Chief and the weapon make up in the kind of the heat of the moment of like, we're going to do this. We're going to go rescue him. She's just like, how? And we're like, we'll do it together. And it was pretty cool.
Can we take a moment to appreciate how much better Jega's active camo is than any other elite in the history of elites?
I mentioned that in the first episode with Oren, yeah, that the camo is serious business in this game.
It's like so good. Yeah, because you had that first scene, you're like, why is this brute possessed? And then you're like, oh, someone's twisting his arm. And then you're like, it's the same here. You can't see him at all. And then he appears, which makes for a really fun boss fight later. But I'm getting a wee bit ahead of myself.
Well, that's pretty much it. Yeah, he kind of fights and captures them. There's loads of cutscenes here of back and forward. It cuts to Skyrim talking to the Harbinger. You can start kind of see that their relationship is souring and breaking up a little bit. There's not a lot of trust there. We still don't know why they're working together, but obviously the Harbinger needs people and resources to rebuild and get access to what she needs. And I'm not really sure why the Banish are going along with her. There must be something else there. I don't think it's overly revealed, but maybe a little bit with the ending of the game. There's stuff going on.
It's not revealed until the end, till we find out the motivation of another character that we haven't seen in a good time. Like, it's explained then. Well, it's kind of explained on and off. Like, Escharum does say a couple of times that Atriox believed in the Harbinger. So, like, that's kind of the setup, but we don't really know what Atriox believed in. And then when you get the audio logs from the lieutenant that unlocked her, what do we call those things again? Silex. Yeah, like, he talks about how she said everything you've known, what is it, something like everything you knew before now I'm here to change, or whatever it is, and Escherum's like, good. You have this vague idea that she wants to like shake things up and the brutes are all about it, but you don't know what the Banished motivation is until like the second last mission, and then you find out exactly what's driven it all.
And what that is awesome, but like, it's the element of we'll get to it, right? So that's pretty much the end of this mission. You jump into a portal to take you kind of as close as the weapon can get you to the pilot's last known location. And then we are into what is called the repository.
I'm going to mention really quick here. So the cutscenes, the second half of the game after Pelican Down, obviously that's what we're talking about. But you notice in every cutscene that Escharum is in, he's starting to wheeze.
Yeah, there is. He is not of a good health.
Yeah, and I thought that was an interesting addition, and I don't know if it was necessary to explain what's to come, and that it seems like he's dying. He seems sick.
I love that. And I love that, like, we got a bit of it before the game was out, where we saw that, like, I think there was one of the cutscenes they revealed about, like, how Skyrim was, like, kind of bored. Then Chief came along and he's like, he uses the word invigorated. That, like, you know, this gives him a new lease. Because I like the idea that he is probably very old. Maybe he's sick, but he's weakening. And he's pretty much looking for a glorious victory, a glorious death. He wants a big way out. And he sees, like, the Master Chief as the perfect avenue for that. And I like that. I like that setup that he has his own little motivation. He's building up his own legend in his brain of, like, how he's going to go out. I love that. I thought that was cool.
I think they do say he was Atriox's mentor, so, like, I think they drop enough clues that he's very old, he's clearly a bit weak. I think from, like, the second or third time we see him, we get his first, like, wheezy cough, and then it just sort of slowly gets worse and worse. And I think, like, he doesn't even think he's going to win the fight with Chief, like, because a couple of times he basically says, like, regardless of the outcome, this fight's going to be, you know, our legend.
Yeah, that's revealed in the audio logs, and that was interesting to go back. And again, we'll talk about this separately, but he's not overly confident about, like, he wants to fight Chief because he knows it's going to be fun, but he's not 100% sure. In the audio logs, he says, either way, I win, because if you kill me, then I'm like a martyr, and if I kill you, then you're dead.
Yeah, it's nearly almost, I was thinking when I was playing it, it's very sort of Star Trek Klingon, like you want to go out in a glorious song of battle, even if you don't win. You want to die in that final act. So I think, like, they do a pretty good job of setting that up without the weapon having to go, oh, Chief, he's dying of brute cancer. He's really old.
Right.
I do love that, like, all his messages that are, like, put out for everyone to see is all him big and strong and shitting on the Chief. And then his private ones that he's recording for himself are like, I'm fucked, and, like, I'm going to die, and I don't think I'm going to win. I love that. I love that it shows him being, like, the boastful leader up front of everybody. But, like, he knows in the back of his mind, Chief is running rampant and building momentum, and he's not. And I thought that was cool. I loved the split there. All right, we are absolutely getting bogged down, but that's what we're here to do, guys. The repository, so the game, to me now, at this point, this is one of these things that video games do. Like, it has a set thing that now is happening in more or less real time, and the game has a bit of a push now for you to keep your momentum and progress going, because obviously you have a character who is being kidnapped on purpose for you to come and rescue for a trap and all that kind of stuff. So, like, okay, the game is pushing you forward, and there's more or less no way out now.
It's like the end of ODST after you go down into the facility. Like, this is just happening. There's no stopping it now. Like, you're on the road to the end. I like this little bit of, like, a weird moment Chief has where he's, like, in the ether and he sees all these, like, he has the flashback between Halsey and it sounds like Captain Keyes, and then he sees Cortana a couple of times, and then he gets a touch of, like, evil threatening Cortana. And then he's spot out at the far end and he's just like, what the fuck was that?
Yeah, what's important as well is that, like, the weapon is seeing all of these as well. So all of these data clusters that she calls and all of these, like, kind of flashbacks and memories, she's seeing them and building up her mind what Cortana is as well. So she's seeing the progress and, let's say, the breakdown of Cortana over time in these memories.
She doesn't know Cortana at all. That's interesting, right?
Yeah, it's like she was given, like, almost no information other than the mission objective, which is kind of fascinating because me and Oren talked about this at the start. Like, at the beginning of the game, she doesn't even know what Banished are. Do you know what I mean? She's never heard of them, and that's kind of really interesting. But sets up a lot with where we get with I think this mission has a bulk of stuff for her development. If I'm thinking between this and the next one, I think it might be in there. Chief wakes up, like Aaron said, they had that kind of flashbacks to, like, the beginning of the program kind of stuff that he gets to see. There's a message then, I think, isn't it, where Skyrim leaves with the pilot and, like, with the coordinates and everything of, like, come and get us kind of thing.
That's like the second cutscene. You fight your way through a few bits, and then you're on this pedestal, and it's like, oh, there's a message, and then it's just him like getting electrocuted or tortured. But it's the same. You notice he's like crossed up the same way that Geffen was in the tower, so you're like, oh, this isn't good. And then, or Griffin, and then the giant Esherim appears, and like, I like the touch when Esherim's angry and he sort of shouts at Chief and he smashes his hand down on the floor, and then the pilot howls in pain, because we find out in the next mission what way that's rigged up. But I like the foreshadowing of that.
Yeah, so the next, like, the weapon, you get up to a window, the weapon kind of looks aside, says, oh, there, that big-ass building in the distance, the only one you can see, that's the auditorium. And we're like, okay, great, that's now your objective. And the coordinates are pretty much leading you towards there anyway. And there's a lot of kind of fighting, you're fighting Banish and stuff like that throughout these kind of bits. There's a lot of lifts, there's some more Cortana echoes. This is a really important one. So there's a Cortana there where she's talking to the AI Leonidas, and he's controlling the Spartan 4 training facility, Lacona Station, which we have been to in the books, but they've never really been mentioned in the games. But this is pretty much where Spartan 4s, I don't know if they're made here, but they're definitely trained here. This is where June is hanging out as well, am I right?
This cutscene confuses me because this does not line up with the books, and I don't know what's going on here. Because in Bad Blood, Buck kills Leonidas and basically saves the Spartan 4s and saves June on the station, and they begin evacuating.
He kills Leonidas, the AI. Buck doesn't kill an AI.
They go on to the training station, they realise Leonidas has turned and he has June unconscious in his quarters, and Buck fights his way to the pedestal and gets Leonidas' chip, and he destroys it. But they have pieces of Leonidas left over, because how they negotiate at the end of that book, when they're on the planet with the Forerunner MacGuffin and the Guardian appears, they negotiate to send the scraps of Leonidas they have left back to the Guardian, and then at the last minute I think Romeo snipes the chip on its way up to the Guardian and kills him. But like, Leonidas is no longer in control of the space station, so I don't know how Cortana spoke to Leonidas to blow up the space station. So I'm a little confused. Like, did they just like undo all of Bad Blood?
I don't know what happened there at all. Yeah, I don't remember that.
According to Halopedia, it just says what was left of Leonidas later made contact with Cortana.
Yeah, I don't know. That was the one bit that threw me, was like, okay, I thought we were evacuating this space station at this point and Leonidas didn't have control of it, but yeah, so that's what happens in Bad Blood. So that was the bit that threw me completely, although I think 76 Spartans is kind of low numbers for that station, because there were more in it, because I think that's where they don't build them there, they build them on Mars. I think they say that in the book, like Buck had to go to Mars to get his Spartan augmentation, but they do all of the training and the armor kitting out there. You have to go there, you get equipped with your Mjolnir, and then you do all your training, and then you go off and become a fully fledged Spartan. So I don't know, that just this cutscene threw me a little bit, because it just seemed like we've undone a novel, which they're going to have to explain this one a little bit.
Or they're just saying this happens after that, and there was still a piece of Leonidas left, and maybe Cortana helped him gain more access, or what access to the domain, he became more than what he was, or they can easily, I'd say, retcon that around if they wanted to. Otherwise, the thing is, in this cutscene, you see Cortana instructing Leonidas to kill himself and blow up the space station and kill all the Spartans, and that's pretty crazy. And like how the weapon reacts to that is pretty interesting too. Like, it's really well done.
Yeah, I think it's just showing, I mean, you know, a lot of this is around Cortana and trying to sort out the end of Halo 5, but it's showing to the player, whether or not they know the deep lore or not, but that Cortana is just taking over, right? And she's going to do everything that she can to make sure that she has this ultimate power at this point of her evil nature, right? Her takeover.
Yeah, and it's important as well, because the weapon asked at the beginning of the game, what did Cortana do that was so bad? The chief just says, she's our target. And that's kind of it. He kind of like glosses over it. And then you can see it building up here for the weapon, getting realization from these memories of all the bad shit Cortana did. And pretty much to the next one, let's say the next sequence is Lord Hood talking to Cortana, and pretty much saying, like, refusing to bow down, and Cortana using the Guardian to wipe out Sydney and the UNSC headquarters there. And we already knew this happened. This happened like previous books, I think.
The only thing we didn't know was that Sydney got wiped out because in the short story, Hood and Osmond evacuate before the attack kicks off. So we now get confirmation that like Sydney is wiped out.
Which is to be expected, I think, based on the power levels of the Guardians are pretty extreme. So, and it kind of shows you this cutscene of Earth and the Guardian, and it just shooting Sydney, and you're just like, okay, that continent is fucked, let alone the city, like, you know. And so it's pretty hardcore. And then the weapon reacts really badly to that, in terms of like, oh my god, she did this to humans, she attacked us.
She is not prepared for the next one.
But the next one is so goddamn good, and like, it's just one of those things I was never expecting, and it just answers so many things, and it's brilliant, right? But anyway, one of the things I like Chief Air, like, he says to her, the UNSC needed to run and hide, and she was like, to fight back, and he was like, to survive.
Yeah, like they just set it up that like this is not, you know, humanity are not like doing well here, and that this was a big blow to them.
Yeah, which we kind of knew, and there's a lot of like details here that they're not really filled in around this time, but we know that things were not great. Anyway, let's get to the one that we've kind of been dancing around. So it kind of shows an echo. Then I can't remember. There's obviously gameplay between one of these two bits. Cortana is talking to Atriox.
I like when this starts. It opens and you have Atriox. He's standing there. He's like he's cross-armed. He looks quite serious. He doesn't look like he can be intimidated. And Cortana's always represented quite tiny. Like she looks like she's about 3 foot tall compared to him. And she's like confident. She offers Atriox the choice. She's like, you know, who do you stand with? And he's like, what was it, the banished always and forever? And she's like, and you understand the consequences of your choice? And he crosses his arms, and then she brings up the hologram of Doisek.
Well, he says, I do. Do you? And then she blows up the Jirahane homeworld.
Yeah, she brings up Doisek. She's like, take your last look at the planet. And I love that moment in his body language where he uncrosses his arms and he tenses up and looks at the hologram, and you realize he knows immediately what's about to happen. And then the Guardians spawn in around it and they detonate the planet. And she's like fairly cocky about all this. And like, you know, you made your choice. It's dark.
Yeah, it's so, I mean, like, it answers like, okay, what's the biggest motivating factor behind the Banish and Atriox? It's this moment. And I'd love to know when this is. I'd like to know, this is a communication she has with him. So is he on the Ark? Is this why he came back? So in my brain, the Banish's priorities switch from whatever they were doing beforehand to, fuck you, Cortana, you're now my mission.
I never thought about that, but that probably makes perfect sense. Like, what would draw him back from the Ark would be the homeworld.
Yeah, so I like the idea that like she did this, and he was like, okay, now whatever I'm doing on the Ark, you're now my objective. And I don't know how he knows it, but obviously he knows that he needs the weapon, so he gets himself, obviously sets up the plan to take out the Infinity, to get on there, to get the weapon, to use that weapon against Cortana. So I spoke this with Oren before. I was like, I don't know how he knows all this, but I'm filling in my own blanks here, thinking that that's what he's doing. And then whatever happens with the Harbinger seems to be something else, maybe something a little bit different.
I wonder, did he learn about the Harbinger and the Endless on the Ark? Because that information might be stored there, because they encounter the Endless after the detonation of the Halos. And I wonder, once he was back on the Halo and looking for the Harbinger, it seems like the UNSC and the Infinity kind of stumbled in on top of them. So I wonder at that stage, did he just put 2 and 2 together and realize he could take them out? Like he did attack the Infinity for the weapon. That's the bit that I'm curious. Did he know the weapon was there? Or did he attack for something else? Because the Infinity, or the weapon's not on the Infinity when he attacks Chief, because the chip's already empty.
Yeah, and that's in the audio logs. So Lasky says deploy the weapon like right as they're coming. So the original plan was for Chief to take the weapon down to the installation to Zeta, and deploy her there. But because of that attack, they just sent the weapon down. I don't know how, but they sent the weapon down without Chief, and then Chief was there defending the Infinity.
As Chief was fighting, based on the audio logs, to get Lasky off the ship. That's what he was doing when Aatrox showed up and kicked his ass.
That sequence of events, I had to re-listen to the audio log and go on Halopedia and figure out, okay, because you originally, and even in the dialogue with the weapon and Chief, talks about Chief taking her down physically to the surface. And then I'm like, well, why, if he was down there and she's not in the ship, how did he get back? But he never actually sent her down. He never got down, boots on the ground, to put her in.
I wonder, did Halsey take him down? Because Halsey never would have survived an attack on the Affinity, so I imagine if she was still going to be alive later, that's a very easy one to be she escorted him down with some Spartans, or her.
I had this conversation with Oren, we really don't know the end result of the Infinity, because the Infinity at the time had 7,000 crew. When Chief does that scam, there's only about 2,000 bodies in space. So there's a significant portion of the crew that isn't on the ring. There is no wreckage of the Infinity. All the high characters, all the higher ups aren't around. Was there an emergency slip space done? Did they leg it?
Well, that's what I wonder. I had wondered originally, did the Infinity explode and that was why the ring was damaged? But we find out later that no, the ring's damaged because of something else. And we hear that Lasky is on the surface because we get that in an audio log that they talk about Lasky's lifeboat. And I was having awful Combat Evolved and Keys in lifeboat flashbacks, because that's never good when they send the captain in a lifeboat anywhere.
There's a significant period of time of the UNSC being on the ring before the ring blows up. So there's months of fighting, and then a few of the audio logs play the explosion happening and how that devastates the Marines as well.
It wouldn't surprise me if we found out later that the Banished took the Infinity as a trophy.
Let me talk about, really quick, I want to talk about the Banished motivation, because this is something that I struggled with Halo Wars 2, is, and again, it's back to this cutscene that we just saw where Cortana destroys Doisac. He's obviously pissed. He wants revenge. He's like, no, I'm Atriox. I the Banished. You just destroyed my homeworld. I'm going to stop you. But he also, so that's the motivation. But then his additional motivation, and this is talked about in the audio logs too, is the Banished want a homeworld. They want a home where they can just not be bothered. And it feels to me like their motivation is to take, I don't know if the Ark is eventually the plan, but at least take Zeta as their home, because it's also a big, double middle finger to the universe. Say, hey, we're going to live here and we're going to live on a giant weapon.
Yeah, I think that was their motivation in Halo Wars to begin with. I think they wanted to go to the Ark to build a Halo and take it as their own. And then when Anders shoots out in the Halo, that's why Atriox is get every soldier we have on that Halo now, because that's what he came here to do. And then she snatches it out from under his nose.
Do you remember as well, Colin, at the beginning, Tremonius in that cutscene is they're trying to get off the ring now. They're like, oh, we're stuck here. This isn't them trying to make a home on Zeta Halo. They're very much of the opinion that we're stuck on this ring. How the hell did we get off here? You told us we were winning. You told us we'd get out of here. That we'd have our revenge against her and all that kind of stuff. So I don't know if Zeta was the home they were trying to do, but I like the idea that might be what they're trying to do now. Anyway, we've talked a lot. So, is there anything else we want to say? Obviously, the weapons reaction to this is awesome, and this sets up the big kind of the trusting moment between the weapon and Chief here happens.
Yeah, she has her epiphany as she goes. I'll chat through it here. She has this epiphany as she goes to click her fingers. She's like, "There's something you're not telling me." And then she brings up the hologram of herself when she's activating one of the grav lifts, and she's all chirping, she's like, "Here's your grav lift." And then there's one of Cortana as she goes to destroy Doisac, and she clicks her fingers, and you see the wheels turning when she's like, "You made a copy." And she's and suddenly she realizes she is Cortana. She is a new Cortana, and then we find out that that's what Halsey did with the cryo brains that she got on Reach. She just made another Cortana, and the plan was the only way to beat Cortana is with a Cortana. So they've made the weapon. He says that you have all the same. I think she says she has all the same intrusion protocols and that. And Chief's like, yes, but Halsey removed any information that might have put you at risk. So he's like, what does he say? You're what Cortana would have been if we never met. So she is like a fresh slate.
He's very much, he is totally like a guilt-ridden person, and he's totally like taking on everything Cortana is now is his fault, and that like in saying that like you're the Cortana if we never met, as if like if I didn't fuck up your life, do you know what I mean? Or if I never failed you, you would be this perfect AI, as opposed to what happened to Cortana. I think that's really cool.
And then, like, she has this moment where she, like, drops to her knees and she's like, oh my God, what if I become her? And she reactivates her deletion process and all. She's like, no, promise me one thing, you'll save him. And then it zooms back. It zooms in really close and the background darkens out. And then when the camera pulls out again, Chief has her in his hand. He's like, no, we're going to do this together. And you're like, oh, look, they're starting to, like, sort of work together now. Because she's, like, shown that she's not like other Cortana, because she's willing to put herself up for deletion. Also, my God, the teeth. There's something very unsettling about her mouth when they zoom in really close to her face there.
Digital teeth are weird.
I love her face. I love her facial expressions. I love the facial capture they did on her. It's so expressive and she's so like quirky. I just love it. I love her little kind of like mannerisms. And the facial capture here is brilliant. I would say the line at the end is really great as well, where she says, "How can you trust me?" And Chief says, "I don't, but I want to." And then they kind of leave together. I'm like, that's awesome. I love that. I love those moments. And speaking of which, the next mission is called The Road. So Chief kind of exits. He's on the structure of the ring, and pretty much this is it. You heading towards. There's a structure underneath the Silent Auditorium, a banished structure. And that's where your coordinates for the pilot are leading you. So you pretty much you're heading towards the House of Reckoning, it's called.
Yeah, this is like another Uber version of the tower, and I don't think there's too much to talk about on The Road, is there? Because it's literally just a straight shot with a really difficult tank fight in the middle.
Yeah, they give you loads of vehicles here, and you just kind of fight your way down a narrow tunnel. There's an achievement for getting the tank all the way to the end and actually into the building without blowing it up. It is quite doable on easy, but even still tough enough. Like, you got to be cautious with your tank here, because there's a lot of enemies that drop in and around you. But it's grand. It also has an awesome Halo music moment here. Like, you jump in the tank, you start moving, the song starts playing, and it's all like, oh, get fucked, Banish, let's go.
Yeah.
I find the best tactic for this was actually get the Marines out, give one of them a power weapon, and then jump into the rocket hog, because you could like zoom around. Yeah, that tank area, I just kept circling around as they picked off enemies one at a time, and then eventually took out the two wraiths. But it's an alright little mission, just not very. There's not much story wise to it, other than you go to the tower and then you get in the tower.
No, it's just a cool moment of getting you from A to B.
It's got lots of feels. Like, yeah, all right, let's go, baby. Yeah.
And then we're in number 14.
Yeah, I was going to say House of Reckoning might be my favourite mission, because I like the conceit in this that you go into the tower, you go up in the lift, you arrive at Atriox's WWF like promo shot again, or Escherum's, and you have like the talk with them. It's like, many people have come here, but no one has left. And then you walk up to the window and you're like, Is that a fire base? And then you realize he's explaining, he's like, come see why the Banished succeeded. And then you go into this, what seems to be like a Banished training facility, where they have UNSC salvage set up in realistic UNSC facilities, and they've clearly been attacking it and like figuring out. So the first one you get is like, there's a
basic training, it's called.
Yeah, it's like the sniper tower in the what is the multiplayer like training level? Yeah, you know the multiplayer academy level that has like the tower. Well, it's the same live fire. It's the same sort of like tower from that, and there's like a patched together pelican. There's a load of turrets around, so you're like moving around through these levels, fighting off wave after wave of banished. And you kill all the ones in this first area, and then the door opens at the back, and Esherim talks a bit more, and you go into the back hallway. You get another promo shot. You go up in the lift to the next level, which is, if I'm trying to remember here, what does that one look like? That is the one with the hunters.
It's the one with the hunters and all of the kind of the brutes that just run at you. Like loads of kind of like close combat enemies and stuff like that. And loads more brutes in this round.
Yeah, I found this one a little bit more difficult than the first one. So like I struggled a bit more with this. I spent a lot of time jumping up onto the walkway and waiting for the hunter to shuffle round, and then jumping round and waiting for the hunter to shuffle back again. So that turned out to be my tactic for a lot of it. But it's another like UNSC mock-up level, and then you succeed in that, and you go out the back, and you get Atriox's like video voicemail again, and you go back up.
Before we get to the third encounter, there is that really cool line where he says, it only took us 4 minutes to take humanity's greatest ship. I was like, oh, that's dope. That's a dope line just to shit on somebody. Like, you know what I mean? That to get you like, oh, fuck you. I thought that was cool.
I like his description when he talks about it. There's like, our first dreadnought come in from the left, and it's like, you were so surprised you didn't see the other three until they impacted, and you're like, they're really, like, their plan was just fuck it up at close range and smash it to pieces.
If you think back to the prologue, you do see two ships hitting at it from two opposite sides, just as like it zooms in. I thought, oh yeah, that was a great callback to the first sequence.
Yeah, so like he's fully on board with this. You know, humanity's finest achievement, and we destroyed it. Well, allegedly, because we don't actually know if it's destroyed outright.
We haven't seen a husk.
Yep, and then we get to the third encounter, which is like an indoor space where you have to fight Jega, the dickhead. I don't like him at all, because anytime I'm relying on the threat sensor, I get very upset. I'm not a big fan of his like uber invis and trying to get him all the time. I did kill him, and I was really happy when I killed him, but I would have liked if it wasn't a lot of skulking around this dark indoor space. But like that's obviously deliberately to get you to fight him.
I think the cheat is to just pile a bunch of coils all in one big pile, and then shoot the coils when he's nearby, and then he just blows up.
I never even considered that as a thing.
Yeah, I saw somebody doing that today. It's like, oh, that's probably how you beat a lot of these guys.
I was chucking them at him one at a time, but you see, I wasn't expecting this, so I did not come equipped with... I would have chosen different weapons had I known I was going to face him. And I imagine if I do this again, I will raid the room before and pick something better. They all have ways to kill them, so... But eventually you kill him, and then you come back out of this room.
Well, do you? Because he goes cloak afterwards, and you don't see the body.
I didn't notice this. Is this a thing?
It's a thing. You don't find his body afterwards. I know Matt Salvatore is into that idea. Maybe he's still out there.
That's okay if he isn't, because we need characters to fight.
He has survived a lot up until now because he has like his artificial arm and his artificial jaw and all, and I could see that being a thing where he comes back again, like if he had the chance. But then you get the weapon says that that the pilot's coming, the signal's coming from above you, and you go up through the lift and you come out into the big arena. And like you walk out through the door and you go, oh, this is a combat arena. And then you see the two holograms and you run up to the pilot at like his blue ball of death and you go to try and release him. And she mentions something about, are they using like tiny micro black holes or something to like stretch him?
Microgravity. She says something like microgravity restraints or something to put like G forces on his body to kind of like torture him. Which is like super elaborate space way of torture. I love it.
Just like Griffin and Shacklock earlier in the game.
Yeah, it looks very identical to his device from before. And then Esherim appears with his mask on, with his uber gravity hammer, and he's like, right, let's get this shit done.
Yeah. He's like a choo-choo train now. It's like, all right, let's go, baby.
This is it. This is the fight night. Ding.
Yeah, you get the big boss fight. Like, I love that the lights go down low and the red warning lights come on, and he just like drops down out of the ceiling with his a weapon you don't see a lot of the time, the scrap cannon.
Yeah, there's a couple of brutes in the game that carry it around. I found it a good few times, to be honest. With big certain brutes that like fobs would have it, or sometimes out in the world you'd find like an uber chieftain with a scrap cannon, and there's a couple of places in the campaign where they pit you against one or two at the same time, and I found them in the wild a good bit as well too. So they're rare, like by all means they are rare, but they're in it. They're around.
I quite enjoy this fight. Like, it once you get round and you realize there's so much stuff in the like in the map and around you. There's turrets. I think there's rockets. There's coils all over the place. You can shock him. So you do like that. You fight him down to the first stage, and then he suddenly reveals that actually now when you fight me, the damage you inflict on me is being inflicted on the pilot. So then you've got to take out the 4 fuses of the weapon, and then you have to fight him again and take his shield down and kill him.
The last one's the hardest when he goes full melee. That's when it gets kind of tough, I think, because then he's just coming at you with a brew hammer, and they run fast. So like, there's tactics here. Obviously, use the shock grenades, you use the coils, or whatever heavy weapon you have.
The thing I ended up doing was, I think I had an assault rifle, and I just kept grapple shotting from side to side of the big room because it takes him a minute. And then I would grapple shot to the far side, and then I would shoot at him some, and then I would grapple shot back when he ran over. And like, you can usually, if you don't time it just right, you get hit by like the gravity wave of the hammer. But as long as you're in the air kind of before he gets all the way over.
I ended up using the thrusters in this part.
Yeah, say again, I had the thrusters as well. This is like, I think the only reason the thrusters exist are for melee boss fights in this game. I had everything leveled up full when I was here, so like I was thrustering and going invis, and that just gains you a couple of seconds really. Like, if you're close enough, they'll see you anyway. But it is handy because it gives you that seconds to change weapons or to pick up something else. It's pretty fun. And Colin, I don't know if you did it either, but I did either of you max out the drop wall. It's great because everything you shoot through it gains electric damage, so you can stun him shooting through the drop, and it's pretty fun doing like using your equipment in that kind of way. I like it for that.
Yeah, that's huge. I feel like the shock damage is pretty handy for bosses.
Yeah, the thruster was one I completely forgot about. You could have like completely, you've just said thruster there, and I went, oh yeah, that's totally a thing.
They're just for boss fights, man. I don't think I ever used them otherwise.
Well, you see, I don't think I had the final upgrade because I said I missed that last base in the open world. So I had put my last points into the drop shield because I knew that was important, because I'd heard a couple of people say that, not to foreshadow, but on the final fight, they were like, the drop shield can be very useful. So I knew to put the points into that. So I don't think I had like the thrust and invis. So I just hadn't used it. But the thing I like about do anyone want to talk anything else about the fight, or do you want to talk about the last scene?
It's a good boss fight, I think. It doesn't last too long, which I like. There's not too many stages or anything. And it's a bullet spongy enemy, but like it does a little bit different, but like making you not shoot him and having to like take down the generators of his shield.
There's a mechanic to it, which I appreciate.
I also super appreciate all the weapons and coils around the map, because you cannot fight him with what you bring to the fight, and I appreciate that they give you a ton of stuff to play with.
When I originally had, I had Jaga's red sword originally.
Did you pick it up? I think I had that too. Yeah, I did. And that's like the first thing I did was like, okay, I'm diving in him with the sword until it runs out. I did that a few times.
It doesn't do a lot of damage to him though. That's the thing. Like it only sort of dings him a bit.
But it feels good, Aaron. It feels good to hit the bad man with the red thing.
So what did we think of the cutscene at the end? Like, Chief frees the pilot, he lifts him down, and then Escharum like limps in and seems to be like completely blind, because he like he's addressing the Chief but facing like the wrong direction, and then he like slumps down and collapses, and Chief catches him before he hits the ground, and he basically tells Chief like, tell everyone I fought well and our fight was legendary. And Chief like sets him down on the ground, and the pilot's like, hang on a minute, why are you treating him nice? And the Chief's like, what does he say? The pilot says like, he's a monster. And Chief goes, yes, yeah. He goes, at the end he was a soldier. And he's like, what? And he's like, he's doing what I would have done. He fought. I was like, he was just trying to decide, was he doing the right thing? And you're like, you have this moment where you go, oh, like if Cortana blew up Earth, you could totally see how Chief and the last of the Spartans could have gone full banished.
Well, I think there's just respect as a soldier. Like at the end of the day, he was fighting for what he believed in. He was a soldier, and Chief is full on soldier. He's not an officer. He's he's doing what he's told to do. Yeah, exactly. So he defeated another soldier that believed strongly in what he was doing. So there's a little respect there at the end of the day, you know, like at the end of a boxing match, you know, like you shake hands at the end, you know, you won or, you know, I won.
Yeah, there's also the element there that Chief has never been like overly passionate or kind of cruel towards his enemies. He just does the job and keeps going. So like, as Chief is concerned, he's won and the fight's over. Like, so there's no need to like dwell on kind of like Eshrom's past, or let's say, you know. I like it. And then I think, is it here where like there's a bit of comedy with the pilot, and he's like, did anyone see a pelican?
The pilot suddenly discovers a sense of humor that he didn't have up until now.
Yeah, there's a hard turn of the pilot's character here, which I'm not 100% sure is earned yet. I think this could be content being cut and like things being shuffled around a bit, maybe.
I'm not entirely sure if the microgravity just fucked with his brain a little bit, but suddenly he's like, he's got a touch of weapon, like spunk in him or something, like peppiness. It's like, no lad, you were almost just torn apart. You're not supposed to be this chirpy about things. Like, oh ho, do you feel that? Like we're getting close, like time to go. You're like, okay, calm down a wee bit, thanks. No, it's a little bit of a hard turn for him, and I'm like, I'm not sure I'm feeling this just yet.
Yeah, but it's a big moment for the team, the trio here, to getting back together, and they're all good with each other, and that's a little bit lighthearted. So I'm happy that they keep moving. But obviously, Chief very quickly is like on to the next thing. Whatever the Harbinger's doing must be stopped. Okay, let's go get it done. And then we have into the final mission of the game called the Silent Auditorium. This is, the guys pretty much get a pelican. They find one. Obviously, there's pelicans all over the ring, and they're totally fine. So we get ourselves a pelican, and away we go. There's a bit of Cortana whispering. I don't really remember too much of it.
A lot of her whispering, and I didn't mention it in the earlier missions, it must have been quotes from books or something like that I just didn't recall, because it wasn't from previous games.
Yeah, some of it I think might be, but some of this was random. It seems like random poetry or just things we haven't heard before. I'm not 100% sure what they are, to be honest. Halo PD will sort that out once eventually. Then we have the weapon kind of knows what the Silent Auditorium is. She says she's been there before but didn't know that's what it was called. This is where the weapon locked down Cortana, and it's where Cortana died. So then we're getting some pretty heavy stuff straight away. So the pelican pretty much lands. Chief jumps out. Whatever weapons you brought from Ascarum are here. So like, if you're like me, I had the hammer and I had something else, and I was like, they're not the best weapons for where you get dropped off. So I found that initially kind of tough, but it is fun with a big ass gravity hammer just knocking fools around.
I brought that hammer to the end.
Did you? Yeah, all the way to the end. Good man.
Yeah. It came in handy.
Actually, here's an interesting thing. Can you refill the ammunition of the hammer?
I must have been able to, because I was able to use it at the end.
Is it like a special weapon like the other ones from the FOB?
It might be a hard light weapon.
Because I don't know if you can, like, you can't refill. I don't think you can refill the arcane sentinel beam from regular sentinel beams, so I'm not sure if you can refill.
You can do it from hard light containers. Refill hard light.
Oh, yeah, it could have been from that then.
Or by walking over other hammers. I might have done that too.
I'm not sure if they apply because they're standard weapons, but I think the hard light might, because he has like that hard light blade on his gravity hammer. So I wonder, is that like it's a hard light weapon? Funny, the playthrough I'm watching at the minute from IGN, they did exactly the same thing. The guy jumped out of the pelican and immediately appeared with a hammer and just like starts wrecking people.
It's a cool. I also like this mission. I think it's pretty cool. And where it goes, and obviously it's the last mission of a Halo game, so there's a crap ton of reveals. There's a lot of dialogue going on. Almost all of it, I think, is interesting, and like had me totally engaged and enraptured in the mission and what was going on. And we're getting a lot of answers. We're not getting a lot of others. There's so many questions and stuff to be asked. So like, we'll keep going, guys. And I know that I'll drop off and the guys will talk about the legendary ending and fill in any kind of gaps I'm going to be missing there. So stay tuned. So let's go. Let's delve into the last mission. So you pretty much do a bunch of fighting. You get through it, kill all the enemies that you get in this kind of landing area, and you kind of get through a door, and then you're like in a forward structure pretty much for the rest of the game. There's a lot of whispers and echoes, and they become more real and more tangible because the closer you get to where Cortana died, they get bigger and more intense. I like that. That's pretty cool that this data is just kicking around and it's getting like physical form. Like a shit ton of holograms in this game. I have to say, a lot of holograms.
Yeah, and I can see how that's off-putting by people that weren't following the Halo story. They do a lot with holograms, but I think it makes sense because, again, back to the whole, they have this Cortana problem to deal with, and they drop you into the game where that's already resolved. So how else are you going to figure out what actually happened?
They certainly made a choice with setting the game where it was, not having what you thought the big thing was be already done by the time the game starts. It is a unique choice for sure, and sets you up for a unique game pretty much. So which is kind of important is that you get one of the first flashes is Cortana talking to the monitor, I believe, and you see behind her over her shoulder the Infinity Warp in, and Cortana goes, "I've been waiting for you to show up. What's the plan? Take me back to the Infinity for deletion." Halsey's going to love that. And then it's not actually John. She turns around and it's Aatrox. And he says, the UNSC is gone. Cortana is like, Aatrox, how did you? And she was expecting Chief, but Aatrox got her to her first. Aatrox is all like, I'm here to discuss the terms of your surrender. And I think this is pretty cool because like, Aatrox is like, go around Cortana, your empire is over, your great plan is ended at the hands of those who made you. I think I missed it at the time, but I think that's insinuating that the weapon has been deployed and she's now trapped.
Yes. He found her when she was trapped.
Yeah, okay.
The one thing that's never clear, and they'll probably answer this down the road, is how did Cortana get herself into that pickle to begin with? How did she become so that was just her on Zeta and then...
Yeah, where's the creative forces? Where are... I did see it. I took a screenshot of it. There is a ruined Guardian on the ring. So I wonder if there was something else happening there that we missed.
I get the feeling that maybe the Banished wiped out her forces before she got there, and maybe she doesn't have a way to like broadcast off the ring. So like she downloaded to the ring and then she's kind of stuck in the ring, and then once the weapon corners her, she's like trapped between the two of them. So the weapon's deleting her, and like Aatrox is there as well.
Well, the weapon's only supposed to contain her. The weapon's not supposed to delete anything.
Yeah, she was supposed to be brought back to the Infinity to be deleted.
This conversation is obviously pretty amazing. Like, Aatrox is boastful. He's won. She said, "Oh, not yet. You haven't beat me yet." He's like, "Oh, such confidence, such arrogance. Do you believe your savior will come, a Spartan?" And she's like, "Yeah, John will stop you." And Aatrox is like, "Hell no, I crushed his skull and threw him into the void. If you asked me, did you understand the consequences of defiance? And what did I say?" And she's really shocked and stunned. And she's like, "You said yes." And Aatrox goes, "And then I asked you the same question. Reflect on your choices, Cortana. Understand the consequences." And then he's like, I don't know if these are different ones, but I'm putting them all together because that's the way Oren has written them. And this mission is just you fighting a bunch of Banished in different encounters. And they're pretty good, to be fair. They're good encounters. I enjoyed them. But like, it's the story, guys, that you're playing this mission for, right? You're running through, you're getting these flashbacks. They're coming hot and heavy. There are a lot of hologrammy data, big, large, super Aatrox. Like, there's one of them is really cool. Like, you're walking into a room with a light bridge and you're on like a pedestal, and like the holograms are massive around you, playing out this kind of old story.
That was a good one. Yeah, it's like Aatrox Cortana conversations, right? Like, it's cool to see how that all went down as you progress.
You get to the one where Cortana suddenly realizes this is it, and she has to hatch like her final plan. So she saves the weapon from being deleted. And she's like talking to herself, going like, no, this has to work. And what is it she says? Like, was this your plan all along, Halsey, or was this my plan? It's like, oh, it doesn't matter. We don't have enough time to worry about it. And she sort of like, you realize she set stuff in motion.
Yeah, she realizes that the only way to carry herself forward is to kill herself, right?
Yeah, and she has that like final conversation. She's like, what is it she says to Atriox? It's like, Atriox, humor me with this one last thing. And she says to Atriox, like, if you could redo your life, what would you do differently? And Atriox is like, absolutely nothing. She's like, oh, good. And then she sort of like walks away from him, and you hear Atriox go like, what are you doing? And then you realize that she must have disintegrated that section of the ring. Like that was her final act, was to cripple the ring that it couldn't fire. So she has left it in this like floaty chunky segment, and that's where like that was what she did. That was her final act as a semi coherent and not completely crazy Emperor Cortana.
And it also feels like Cortana knew what was on the ring because she had a conversation there that like where she thought like when the monitor was telling her you can't get through containment, and Cortana was like, containment? Why would I be bothered with the flood? And she's like, oh, there's something more here that's worse than the flood or whatever. So I think Cortana not only blew up the ring, but blew up the specific portion of the ring that mattered, i.e. the silent auditorium. That's why Harbinger had to fix that, because that area is key. So I think it wasn't just the fact that she was all disabling the ring, but she was disabling the specific portion of it that they all needed. We also jumped ahead a little bit. There was in the middle bit here where you come into the room and you meet Adjuant's Resolution again. And he's like, oh, totally sorry. Let's all be friends now. Didn't mean to kill you. Didn't know that she wasn't going to rebuild the ring. She was actually trying to break the seal. You cannot break the seal. Get out there and beat her, blah, blah, blah. So I like that because obviously we're getting a monitor now on our side that will probably come into the game again.
That's the third encounter with him, right? Like you fight him twice, and then the last time he's like, oh, things are cool. Sorry for the misunderstanding.
Yeah, and you don't really see. I thought he might come into it near the end. I thought you might see him in the boss fight, but you don't.
Yeah,
you don't. He doesn't come in again. So that's just important to kind of know to see there. So I like all the dialogue where obviously there's a separate memory, which is the Cortana having the microseconds of planning, and where she says a bunch of stuff, and she's obviously in the room with Atriox, and what he says, I need your decision. And before she makes the decision, she comes up with this plan of what she's going to do. Of okay, oh my God, Halsey created a clone. It's of me. John's going to need her. I can't do this. She's going to have to be the one, and it's not about me. Then she kind of obviously deletes the deletion protocols because obviously she did that for herself originally, which is kind of cool. I think that's mentioned somewhere in one of the books that like Cortana very quickly figures out the kill switch that Halsey puts into the AI. She disables it almost pretty quickly. So she's obviously adept at doing that, so was able to take the protocols out of the weapon. That's pretty cool.
Do you think she, in this moment, and I know we're running long and stuff like that, and we still have some more to talk about, but do you think in this moment she realizes her wrongs?
That's the impression I got, that she had the epiphany of a character turn, like a big character turn, given the fact that like recently enough she wiped out a planet, like, you know, so it seems significant. It seems a bit of a hard, like, full 360.
I get the feeling that the moment it actually clicks for her is when she's talking. She's like, oh no, Atriox now has control of this weapon pointed at, like, what did she say? He has control of this weapon pointed out at the universe, and he's got nothing to lose because of my stupidity. Like, it's the moment she realizes, it's like, I blew up this guy's planet. Now he has a Halo, and he's got fuck all to lose. He doesn't care anymore. Like, the Banished are going to be on the Halo. He can take it and detonate it where he likes if he wants to. And I think that's the moment she realizes, like, I got too carried away and I've put everything at risk.
And she does, there is, let's say, I think it's, we'll jump ahead, let's say, okay, there's a bit of here, we meet up with the Harbinger, there's a fight here. It's an okay fight. I don't mind it too much. I don't know what you guys thought about it. I thought it was fine. It wasn't really, I wasn't overly sure what the hell she was trying to, she's making some connection with some other portion of the ring and trying to do something.
As far as I can tell, she is trying to find out where the Endless are stored and transmit that information to a third party that hasn't been revealed at this point. The only criticism I have of that entire boss fight is that Chieftain. He can... Ugh.
The chieftain who comes out with the hammer?
He is awful. I hated him. I got fucked up by him so much. I was like grapple shotting off pillars. I was going up onto the platforms. You were then getting sniped by the wee guys, and you're trying to like work your way around the arena and take out all of his escorts, and then you're trying to take him out, and it's I hated that. Like, if ever I think he was harder to kill than the Harbinger. Like, I think he was worse.
Yeah, the Harbinger itself wasn't difficult, I don't think, and he was definitely a harder part of it. I don't know what she's like on the higher difficulties.
I'm sure the higher difficulties is gonna be rough. I like the arena though; it gives you lots of space to use your grapple or move around and do all that sort of stuff. It makes it feel fair. Now you just have to be, stick wise better than what they're throwing at you. So it felt good. You had to use a little bit of everything.
I need to go back and listen to the dialogue again during the fight, but did anyone catch? I'm pretty sure there's a line where she talks about how, what does she say? It's something along the lines of like, people were saying before that her armor appears to have a reclaimer symbol on the forehead, and is she the reclaimer now, or is that important? But at one point during that fight, she says something along the lines of like, this armor's not even mine. It's like, this is what the Forerunners turned me into. One of the times I'm moving around the room and fighting, trying to get the chieftain, and she like calls this line out, and it makes me wonder like, oh, is this not what like the rest of the Endless look like? Like she's something different?
I'm not sure.
I'll have to go back and listen to that one again, but like, yeah, like you kill her in this fight and she has her last like glowy, the Endless will come. You can tell at the end she's like talking to someone on the other end of the comm line. She's like, you have all the information you need. It's like, what is it? She says like, tell them sorry it took me so long to release them. And then she basically drops dead and they're standing there. And then Chief is like, oh fuck, we need to get out of here. And the building's collapsing. And then the portal opens and they're like, what do we do? Do we go into it? It could be dangerous. And Chief started looking around like, well, it can't be any worse than being crushed here. So they jump through the portal.
The only thing is, do you know what you were saying? Okay, she's transmitting the information to someone else. The fact that the weapon says, he says, who are you talking to? And she goes, I don't know. The signal's old, like really old. So I thought that she was talking to the Endless and not to this other third party we're about to talk. So what's the old, really old part of this signal?
I think the really old thing is the whooshy portal looking thing that's like shooting down from the wall. She talks about it being a sentient signal. So like, I think she's using the signal to find the burial place of the Endless, but she's then relaying that information to the third party. So like that, because the weapon talks about how this like search thing is sentient. So it seems like she's using some sort of like software or AI to like probe the Halo to find out where the Endless are stored. Well, that's what I took out of it. And then she's relaying this information to the third party. And then that's the conversation that they're having as she dies. And then Chief and the weapon come out the far side of the portal.
Well, before that, we have a pretty significant moment. This is the one where Cortana talks directly to John. You almost think that it's in real time because they do the funny thing where she says, it's just another echo. And she's like, oh, yes, John, I'm just another echo. And she laughs like, I'm only messing with you. I knew she would say that. And then she kind of says her final goodbyes, and it's a really, really poignant moment, really, where she apologizes for what she did, and kind of gives the two of them like the go ahead of like, I did what I could with the time I had. I hope it was enough, and kind of just it says like, we always say goodbyes. It's pretty hardcore.
Yeah, it's her. She recorded this knowing that they were going to find it, which is cool, but super heartfelt here at the end. And you also appreciate too, Jen Taylor, how she's able to make a distinction in voice between the two.
There's never a misunderstanding of like who you're listening to, or who you're seeing, which is pretty good.
No, it definitely pulled on the heartstrings a little bit. Like I felt a tinge of emotion here, like similar to Halo 4 when they're having their goodbye. Like you get that and you're like, they did a good job with this.
And she appears as her CE kind of persona. She's not all creatified or anything like that.
Yeah, no, I did like that last little interaction. I actually had forgotten that was here. I thought that was before the final fight.
No, it's just after. It's kind of like, you know, it's not in the teleporter, right? I think it's before. Maybe it's when you go into. I can't remember.
I am scrolling through the fight right now. I forgot how long this takes. There's that chieftain.
Yeah, and then a teleport shows up at the very end here after you have that chat. She walks through Chief's chest, and then that's when everything starts falling apart.
Yeah, she appears just after the Harbinger drops dead, and then you have that last fight, and that's it. Then they teleport out. They appear in the desert biome. We get teased that we might get some more Halo, and then he jumps back on the Pelican, and he's away off. Oh, he gets the awkward hug. I love the hug. The pilot runs out of the cockpit and grabs him, and like Chief moves his arms up to like hugs back, and then he's like, no, I don't hug back, and he just stands there frozen solid, and he's like, I really missed you. And it's like, oh, give him a wee hug there, Chief.
I thought this was cool, but like, you appear on the other side of the ring, looking at the broken portion of it. So like, you're fucking miles away, and the pilot shows up in like a couple of seconds. I was like, maybe that should have taken a bit longer, because it does set you up that you're on like a completely different portion of the ring, looking up at the broken segments where you were fighting for the majority of the game. So I thought like, oh, that's a little bit weird. But then maybe that comes into the play that, okay, Chief is missing for 3 days, which kind of comes out that like that whatever happened in that teleporter, it took time, and like maybe he was just doing laps of the ring looking for Chief.
Probably something like that. I assume this would have set up what you would have done next in any sort of mission where you would have a new area and stuff, but like instead we go back to the opening area.
Yeah, they nicely leave it in to like, okay, what do we do next? Oh, there's other Marines that need help, there's other objectives. Like, oh, Chief says to the weapon and put it on the map. I'll go do it. That's kind of cool. And that kind of just sets you up to going back to the open world and to continue fighting. And obviously there's the end sequence where you have the exchange of names, which is significant, I think, in kind of the way it happens.
We finally get a name for the pilot, so we don't have to call him Pilot. And then we get the tease of the weapon picking her name, except I love that it's really weird. It's like, oh, what about you? What do I call you? And it's like, is it all right? And Chief nods and is like, are you sure? And he's like, yes, you get to pick your own name. It's like, well, I have the perfect name. And then everyone just turns around and the pilot jumps into the pilot seat, and you're like, hang on, she never said her name, and you're all just like flying away. It's like, no, you're supposed to say your name out loud. And we all, like, we can assume she's going to call herself Cortana. And this is how you do a soft reboot of Halo, which I'm not entirely sure how I feel about Cortana 2.0.
Yeah, I really wish it was a different name.
Unless she calls herself Cortana Vista Edition. And we just go with that.
Well, I feel like Microsoft had a stake in that because they've named their voice assistant Cortana. So, and then right when they did that, it was like, oh, crazy Cortana's in play. So now they're happy that it's happy Cortana.
I don't know. I kind of wish she had her own name so she could be her own character and not just.
Yeah, but they leave it open. They don't name her.
But it's kind of super obvious, right? That's the name she's choosing.
What if she just called herself Samuel instead?
Oh, yeah.
Throw a complete from left field. What name did you pick? I'm Sam. Do we want to talk about, before we go into the legendary ending, do you want to talk about the standard ending, David?
So yes, we can absolutely do that. So that's kind of it. Credits roll, end of the credits. The most obvious reveal in the whole world is that I like that it's told from first person at the start too. I thought that was kind of cool. So you have a large hugging character moving through a structure, and it moves up to a pedestal. It has a really funky device which we've never seen before.
You see a holographic representation of it at one of the banished scenes.
I think it's where they show the Silex for Harbinger.
Do they?
Yeah, Halo Canada did point it out that you do see it.
It's significance that, let's say, the Harbinger is a particular color, and all the stuff she does is, I know you said green, Aaron, but it was yellow to me. That might be your colory thing. That color of this device that opens up with this kind of a yellow electricity, which we've only seen in relation to the Harbinger, who moves and teleports with this color electricity shooting off her. So that device opens up, has this electricity in the middle. A brute hand puts it down onto the pedestal. It activates it and opens up an area which has Silexes with a symbol that we've kind of not seen, kind of have seen. This symbol seems somewhat familiar. It's a similar shape to the device. It's like a 3-pronged thing. They're all red, so all the other Silexes in the game were blue. These ones are red.
I thought they're orange.
Yeah, they're not the same color as the device. They're darker. I'll give you that much. That I can remember them being like a darker color, more ominous, essentially.
They're very much like it looks like a hazard color. Like you should not be opening these devices.
Exactly. Like these aren't supposed to be opened back up, and the camera turns around and it's Aatrox, but with no face paint on. So there was a second of hesitation for me of like, is it him? I was like, oh yeah, it's totally him.
As soon as I saw like the gauntleted hand, you knew immediately who it was. But like, I love that when you see him at the end, he has like his face is scarred up, so you can tell like he took a beating getting off the Infinity.
But yeah, but like to say, the last time we saw him, which was before the explosion, was the Cortana holographic scene. So I'm presuming that. Do you think that was a communication, or do you think that he was physically at the location where Cortana blew it up? Because that's what I was thinking, that he was at everyone thinks he's dead because he was in the portion of the ring that blew up. So like that's what I was thinking. So like I did you think, was his face scarred? Is that what you're thinking?
It looked to be sort of scarred. I assumed that came from the fight on the Infinity as well.
I thought it was from the explosion or whatever happened to him.
It could have been. I'd have to go back and look at the holograms again and see, can you make that out?
I mean, he's an ugly guy to begin with, so it's hard to tell if they're fresh scars or...
Was anyone surprised by this guy? Like, they were never killing Aatrox off screen?
No, I didn't believe he was dead 1 second. When they alluded to it, they actually, I think Tremonius said in that initial cutscene where they're kind of talking with the hand of Aatrox that he's dead. But then every time Escharum references to him, he says he's gone. So I don't think Escharum ever says he's dead, but they just assume because of that one scene that you're like, well, maybe he's gone. But yeah, I mean, you know, I'm a big Aatrox guy. I knew he was still around. Come on, you can't kill him like that.
Like, he is without a doubt the best character they have made in all of 343 era Halo. So there's no way they can kill him off yet. Like, I don't think... No one else, Lasky, Roland, Palmer, like none of those other characters have hit with the community in the same way that the Banished and Aatrox have. So I didn't think they would kill him.
That's the game, guys. It's a whopper, and this is a whopper of a show. So I'm going to chime out now. Almost 2 hours. Holy, I knew this was going to be long. Before I go, I will say I love the game. I love the campaign. I don't know if I love the campaign, but I think the story is pretty great, but not perfect. And there's so many things that I could I want to know. I'm not 100%. Like the beginning of the game, I think it doesn't begin well. I'm like, where's the rest of it? I was totally shocked with the kind of the intro of this game, of like that it started. It is as short and as little information as it is. That it just immediately cuts to the E3 intro sequence, and then that's the game.
Did you avoid all like marketing stuff? I forget, going into the campaign.
Coming into it, I saw maybe like 1 or 2 pieces, but like I hadn't seen a whole lot, so I don't know if they revealed more of that going in.
Well, I had kind of prepared myself for like where they were inserting us into the story, so like I feel like I already came to terms with that. So when I dove in, I was like, okay, here we go. Oh, because I had watched like the opening first missions from Ian and everybody else that got early access. So I was like coming in like, okay, this is the spot in the story that they're dumping us off at. But I can see for you expecting, you know, maybe to play the resolution.
Yeah, I was like, where's the link between the end of 5 and the beginning of Infinite? Like, for me, like, that's just such a huge time, such an important time of, we haven't even got a lot of content that happens post-created, do you know what I mean, of like what they've been doing, how has the UNSC been running and fighting, like where's the Swords of St. Helios, do you know what I mean, where are all these characters that are just very loosely touched upon in the game. And then obviously this sets me up for, like, I was so hungry in this game for what was going on that I spent so much time looking for extras, looking for the audio logs, trying to piece together. And like some of the audio logs give me what I wanted, but a lot of them left me just not happy or like just not satisfied. Of like, I want to know, they don't fill in the gap now. I know because of, I was with the conversation with Oren where I linked, okay, the audio logs talk about Rubicon Protocol, and there's a book called Rubicon coming out soon. So I'm alright, okay, that's going to set in there. It's going to talk about these things, but ultimately I get the impression it's going to be based on these characters in these audio logs that I already don't have a massive link to. I'm not going to say I don't care about, but I don't know much about them yet. But like, as far as I remember, one of those audio logs ends with one of the last Spartans going, I'm going to run up the ring and go look for more people. So there's at least one dude we know that might be still kicking around, and then everybody else is kind of fecked, and then you kind of find the rest of the stuff. So I do like the story. I love what they did. They just, when you hear about them talking about before the game came out, and they're talking about spiritual reboots, and we were going, oh fuck, what does that mean? Absolutely makes sense. I get everything that they were trying to do. They made Halo CE again, essentially. They did a fantastic. I think the open world is as simple, like I said to you, Colin, before. The open world is so simple, but I found it so engaging. Just with the Halo skin on top of it, just really caught me. I liked everything that it was doing. I can see there's so many gaps. There's things missing for sure. We know that it wasn't developed well. Do you know what I mean? There was problems there and stuff got cut. And it seems like such an easy thing in my brain just to drop in DLC. You can pop up another island anywhere you want on that map, and then we can go explore. So like, I think it's a fantastic starting off point for what comes next. I think that's one of the best things I can say about it. Like, it does give us a slate to build on. We have fantastic kind of building blocks there with the Banished, who I actually genuinely really like. I like them as an enemy. I've always said I've liked them that they brought them into the first person. That makes total sense.
Were you surprised that they didn't go back to the well with the flood, or they set up, even though we don't see the Endless, they set up an Endless, a new enemy, a brand new thing?
I felt it kind of weird that, like, okay, if there's no flood, that's fine, but we have a mysterious race that is worse than the flood. Dun, dun, dun. I was like, oh my god, okay, is it just another, like, even the name The Endless could be like, it gives me the connotations of a flood, of like a race that is endless. So is it just like, do they have so many numbers? Are they constantly repeating? I kind of have a feeling like, because of some of the dialogue and some of the kind of things that they made it sound like it's a race not encountered by the Forerunners before. They didn't really know how to catalog them or deal with them. So I'm almost wondering the same way that Aaron was saying, the Harbinger might not be an Endless.
It is. They did put that in the audio logs. Yeah, they're called the Zelanin. So that's the race name. Yeah, and she is one of them.
In my head, I was thinking, are they like a mechanical or a digital race? Are they something so unique and weird?
But we don't know, because those images that are on those Silexes, those are different than like hers. So yeah, and we don't know, like with the Banished, like how did they know to pick hers first? Maybe that was an Atriox thing. Maybe he figured that on the Ark. There's lots of stuff that's left open.
I got the impression he needed her to get to the Endless, so like she needed to do everything she did in this game. Essentially, she knew how to. Maybe was kind of she had the knowledge. But again, are the Endless then? Are they a weapon to be used against people? Are they like a slave race? I'm not really sure what's going on, what they are. But...
Well, all we know about them is that the Forerunners didn't know about them until after they fired the rings, and then they realized, oh, there's a race, there's things still alive, and they did not get taken out by the Halo firing. So, but we don't really know how big of a threat they are. So that'll be unfolded obviously over the next couple of years, next DLC, next game, all that sort of stuff. We don't know how big of a threat they actually are. We just know that they can't be killed by the Halos, which poses a threat.
Yeah, I get the vibe that was the fear, was that because they're immune to the Halo and the Forerunners are not immune to the Halo, that is like the ultimate fear, is like they could
they end up giving the Endless the mantle of responsibility just by being the only race still around.
Yes, they're the only race left because they could, in theory, take control of the Halos and wipe out all resistance with no fear themselves, and that is like the ultimate worry with them. At least that's what I got from it. Like they say numerous times that like I think the Monitor says it in her own audio logs as well. Like she's come to realize that the Forerunners' ultimate fear wasn't the flood; it was the loss of their power.
It was becoming slaves. It's becoming not the masters anymore, being the slaves again. Yeah, I mean that's cool, and that makes and lines up with what we know of the Forerunners already.
But the other interesting thing is that, so they found the Endless after the firing of the ring. There weren't many Forerunners left, but they were still able to contain them. So how did they do that? And that makes me wonder, like, how big of a threat actually are they?
I kind of wonder, is it more that they are, like, not necessarily the most technologically advanced? Like, they maybe weren't a match for the Forerunners?
Maybe they were contained to one planet and they just came in and grabbed them all or whatever. And
had the Forerunners not found and encountered them, that they probably would have ascended to dominance long before the galaxy reseeded, because they would have been the only ones left.
Maybe they were kind of in the middle of their evolution or something like that.
Yeah, it sets up an interesting like race and an interesting backstory to them. Like they're not necessarily bad guys. They just got totally screwed over by the Forerunners and like totally. That's kind of what the Harbinger was kind of getting at. That like I'm not your enemy and that kind of stuff. And I can kind of see that. And like I don't think there's we don't know anything really about them. But let's just say they were totally screwed over by the Forerunners. Then we should probably be on their side. But everybody wants them for a reason, and they seem to be labeled as being dangerous and labeled as being wrong. And as Chief says, like, what do you do? Are you scared about like the Forerunners captured this race and threw away the key? Like, does that make you scared?
And Atriox was interested in them, obviously. So he found out about them somewhere, and then he, his goal, they talked about the goals of the Banished and the Harbinger aligning. So he was also interested in waking up the Endless, but for what exact reason? Again, back to his motivations. What are the Banished's true motivations? Still a little up in the air in my mind.
At least maybe they didn't initially have one before, but now they have an obvious one of maybe getting a world or a home world, or do they want revenge? Or that's a motivation we can all get behind.
I have heard a thing that the other motivation that the Forerunners might have had is that were the species to find themselves on the receiving end of the flood, and if they were flood compatible, you could end up with Halo immune flood, and that would be a big, big bad issue. So that's another reason to get rid of them.
It's interesting. I'm intrigued to say the least of what's coming on, but like the Endless wasn't for me the big pull of this game. Like I was more interested in the characters and the bandit and the weapon and Cortana. Like that was my focus really. The Banish was just nice to have a good legitimate excuse to fight Covenant races again that weren't Covenant, and I liked the weapons, the displacement of the campaign. The campaign played really well. I really enjoyed the open world, and I don't know, it's pretty great. I think it's a great starting point and a great place to build on. Especially if we're getting a fresh new Cortana, do you know what I mean? Super. I'm down with that. I warmed more to the pilot as the kind of game. Like I really did not like him at the end, and then the reveal after Pelican Down of who he is and what he is, that was interesting. I feel like there is a gap there though between his character arc and his Chief. Do you know what I mean? He shouldn't just immediately love Chief. I feel like there should have been a bit more build there, but whatever. It's pretty great.
I feel like the campaign itself, the Infinite, was in a spot. Yes, like 343 is obviously setting themselves up in a new world and like all the possibilities that are available on a Halo, but they are also were trying to put together the pieces, kind of reset the world, and you uncover what happened off screen throughout the entire game. Like that's kind of the end goal, right? And then obviously setting up Endless and anything else. But like that was the driver, right? Throughout the entire campaign is like, okay, where's Cortana? What happened to Cortana? They're slowly unveiling what happened in those conversations with Atriox and everything that she did leading up to that final moment. So, but that was enough of a driver for me. I felt like, obviously the gameplay was fun, but finding out, how did they resolve the big bad of Cortana off screen? I feel like they pulled it off pretty well.
They do, for sure. They do. They didn't have an easy task. I think they did get the good balance. I think the game tells you enough of what's going on for the game's sake without you knowing everything else in the background, and it does a good enough job. I'm not a huge fan of trying to fill in the blanks of what happened before. I would have liked to have known way more, because it made me, it kind of, in a way, made me care way more about what happened in the game, before the game, than what was happening in the game. That's where my brain was constantly trying to piece together the past, as opposed to pay attention to what was happening now. And obviously, that was a deliberate choice. That was the story they wanted to tell, and the way they wanted to tell it. And obviously, there is room to fill in those blanks in time with all other mediums and whatnot. So we'll see where it goes from here. But I'm excited. I'm pretty excited with the game. I'm playing it a ton. I've played it through twice. I'm playing on Legendary now, and I have to say, except for the occasional boss fight, it's probably my favorite Legendary campaign. It's just really well balanced, I think, as a game. The open world seems to make the Legendary way more fun. I think way more easier, because I can get the weapons I want more or less when I want them, and like to tackle like the situations are still challenging. Like you still have to like think and move a little bit differently, which I like. And I'm more or less using the same weapons I like, which is kind of cool. Like they're all still viable. I love the fact that sticking my Marines with heavy weapons on a Razorback is still a viable tactic on Legendary, and that still works really well. I'm liking that a lot. There's just some of the boss fights there, just, oh man, fuck this game. But again, they're doable. Obviously, they're all doable. I think with that, I know you guys are probably want to finish up too, so I'll let you guys talk about the Legendary ending, and I will bounce out here, and you can piece together some theories and stuff. And I'll tie in with you guys later when we get a Legendary ending together.
All right, sir.
All right, peoples. All the best. Thanks for listening.
Alright guys, welcome back. We have kicked David off the call. It is just us. We are going to talk about the Legendary ending. For the benefit of the audio listeners, I am going to splice the audio in here. It's about 1.5 minutes long, so if you were saving yourself on spoilers, don't be doing that. Or don't be listening to this part. The only difference between this ending and the standard ending is this audio dialogue. This is over the top of the scene we see at the end with Atriox unlocking the Silexes. So have a little listen here and then join us back on the far side.
Are the vessels prepared?
The Silexes are ready, as is the auditorium. Grand Edict, this is most unprecedented.
The Endless must be contained. I will inform the Criterion to proceed.
They believe we are here to help.
It matters not. Today we do what it takes to maintain order, to preserve our truth. Time will forget they ever existed.
Time is not a construct we can control.
And we cannot allow it to be theirs. If Halo cannot end them, it must imprison them. When it is done, the engineers will be busy. We will learn their secrets.
I fear I cannot do this alone.
You shall not be alone. The Criterion has given the order. Offensive bias has been deployed.
Okay, so now that we've listened to that, there's a little bit to talk about here. So we have four names dropped. So we have Despondent Pyre. She is having a conversation with a forerunner called the Grand Edict. I don't believe they've ever been mentioned before in the lore. They also name drop a third forerunner called the Criterion. And they also mention another character called Offensive Bias. That one caught me completely off guard. So to go over the bit of this conversation sounds like The Grand Edict's asking Despondent Pyre, are the vessels ready? She says, yes, the Silexes are ready. And she's like, I have misgivings about this. They think we're here to help them. The Grand Edict basically says, no, the Endless must be contained. You know, we have to maintain order and protect our truth, which I may assume would be like the mantle and who's in charge of it, because it sounds like that's a theme. And he talks about how the engineers will have time to study the Endless and figure out how like they were resistant to the Halos. And Despondent Pyre says, I'm not sure I can take on this task alone. And the Grand Edict basically goes, oh, you won't be alone. Offensive bias has been deployed.
That's the bomb.
Because this is the big thing. Offensive bias has basically never been mentioned since the Forerunner books and originally the Halo 3 terminals. Like, we know next to nothing about offensive bias other than it was a slightly more limited AI than Mendicant bias, but ultimately beat the shit out of him and won that final fight. Do you think it's pretty cool to go this route and go like, right, this is where offensive bias has been all this time, and this opens up so much stuff in the game to different interpretation, because it makes you wonder, did offensive bias open the portal at the end? Wherever Chief and the weapon went for 3 days, did they go to see it? At one stage earlier in the game, the weapon talks about how she's in the system and something's helping her. At first, I assumed that was like the ghost of Cortana, and then you're like, oh, it must be offensive. So, like, this opens up a lot. So what did you think of this, like, audio to begin with?
Yeah, so it opens up with the dates too, which is important. And I've watched a couple other theory videos and whatnot, and I always enjoy what Ian Halo Canon has to say. The date here is apparently 77 years after, which I love it, 77 years after the firing of the Halo. And so there's only a couple Forerunners that are around. We don't exactly know how many, but they're more or less just kind of cleaning things up in the galaxy, right? They're reseeding all of the worlds with all of the races that were obliterated, and just making sure everything's tidied up before they go wherever they went afterwards.
Yeah, I'd need to look it up, but I'm pretty sure the reseeding hasn't actually started yet. I think, I can't remember off the top of my head, but I think it's like, is it like 100 years or 150 years before they start the reseeding? It's a while, isn't it? Like, they wait.
It may be after this, but yeah.
Yeah, I think the Forerunners wait for a while. But like like you said, this conversation is taking place in the past. Do not get confused with the people that seem to think that this date is a reveal that Atriox travelled back in time, because I do not believe for a second that's what's happening, because this conversation is clearly taking place before the Endless are in the Silexes. But if we look at the cutscene, it would appear that Atriox is about to release the Endless from the Silexes. So the two can't take place at the same time.
Well, and they do this in Halo 4 too, right? Where they have the Didax talking like way back in the day, but then the video is current present day on New Phoenix when they're finding the ashes of the people. Same type of thing.
I always assume that conversation in Halo 4 is the trial of the Didact that took place before Mendicant Bias attacked, and it is not like the Didact after Halo 4. This opens up to a lot of potential. Like, there's very little backstory with Mendicant Bias, so they have with Offensive Bias, so they have a pretty blank slate to do whatever they want with it. Do you remember back when they did the campaign trailer reveal, and you see there's one cutscene in that reveal that is not in the game where Chief is standing and there's 3 lights reflecting in his visor. People were theorizing on what it might be, and some people still think it may be an Endless reflecting in it, and some other people said, well, the lights are the wrong way around, but it is like the 3 eyes of those, like the housings that Mendicant Bias and the other super Forerunner AIs sit in. Like, normally there, I think it's 2 and 1, but I don't know what way. I'm not entirely sure if Offensive Bias is like visually represented.
Yeah, and I wouldn't be surprised if they're reversed, right? Like it's like a yin and yang type thing. But Mendicant is still somewhere, like the remnants of Mendicant still on the Ark, right?
He is, yes, he's still buried in the desert. So, like, he's still there as well.
So he still exists, and now we know that offensive bias exists in some capacity. You know, a lot of the theory crafting for the Infinite campaign beforehand was like, oh, it's going to be like, you know, the weapon versus Cortana, just like it was Mendicant bias versus offensive bias way back in the day. But they didn't really, that never happened in the Infinite campaign. You know, the weapon and Cortana never went at each other. But essentially what they're kind of setting up is maybe Mendicant bias and offensive bias, maybe that will happen eventually down the road. Who knows?
Yeah, I kind of wonder what it could be. Like, it seems like offensive might be our ally. It's hard to tell. Like, Mendicant bias is very much our ally. Like, we get that from Halo 3 in the terminals. He is all about atonement these days. He wants to make right for everything he did wrong. But offensive never had that, so could be a threat, could not be a threat. Like, we don't know. We assume it would be friendly because their interest would be in keeping the Endless contained, and humans are the Reclaimers, but I don't know, it opens up a lot of things. I like the possibility with it that offensive is still there on the ring, pulling some strings.
I mean, there's just so many possibilities they could go with offensive bias, and there's not enough information, I feel like. So maybe some stuff will reveal itself over time. And I do like the fact that maybe he was, you know, active behind the scenes. The thing that's interesting, though, back to Despondent Pyre is Despondent Pyre has been silent, completely silent up until now, right? Like, this is the first time we knew the name, but we'd never seen her do anything.
She never made herself, she didn't make herself known when the humans found the ring, because we get that in Hunters in the Dark. They were never able to find the monitor, and they theorized that, well, we keep blowing up fucking Halos every time we talk to the monitors, so of course they're going to keep their distance. But it's entirely possible that it was offensive, keeping her in check and going like, no, we're not making contact. Like, I kind of wonder, like, he's been there the whole time. He's had access to the Halo and the rest of it. So it makes you wonder what the reasoning for that was. And it also kind of makes sense. Like, you locked a lot of stuff away in this Halo. You leave it in the hands of someone capable. And you're not worried about the flood. You know, you're not worried about logic plagues or anything this time round. And offensive is purely there to experiment on these creatures. And you have going back to the Forerunner books, you have the Palace of Pain. So like, this is what this ring is here to do. It's here to experiment and study specimens and do all that sort of thing.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Like, it's a good little legendary ending. Like, I like a little bit of audio that drops a few names and gets you excited about stuff. I'm curious to see if any of these things are mentioned in the Rubicon Protocol. I assume the Forerunners probably won't be mentioned, but like, if we got an honorable nod from offensive bias or something, would be interesting.
Yeah, that would be cool. I think, yeah, it's a classic, so it's obviously perfect for us lore nerds, right? Like, hey, I know that offensive bias name, and you know, I know that there's only a few things that they've told us about, so there's lots of places they could go with that. And it's also classic, just kind of hanging threads. I feel like throughout the entire game, there's lots of little hanging threads that they drop. Again, we don't know where a lot of the big names are. They're out there somewhere. The Endless is obviously some concern of theirs. We don't know what the Infinity is, all that sort of stuff. And then also offensive bias, this Forerunner AI is also with us. So I like the nod. And it's, you know, it's kind of similar, and hopefully they don't resolve it like they did the end of Halo 5. Like, the legendary in Halo 5 was the beginning of this game, right? So it turns out that was Zeta Halo, which is cool. So I like that tie-in.
The other thing I like about this ending is it gives us the motivation for why the Endless may be someone to worry about, because it very much sets up that the Endless thought the Forerunners were here to help them. That's That's what they say. You know, they think we're here to help, and then they entrap them and tried them and locked them away for the crime of being immune to the Halo. That's how they got done over. Like, this is the only reason they are locked away in this Halo, is because they had the misfortune of being immune to it. You can see why they would have a very strong motivation to escape the Halo and tear down everything the Forerunners built.
If they're capable of that, we don't know what they're capable of.
Yeah, I'd imagine, like, teaming up with the Atriox, they'll be fairly powerful. Even if they're not Forerunner level powerful, no one in the Halo universe currently is. Cortana was the last real stepping stone, and Atriox has proven he's capable of taking out someone on that level, so maybe with the Endless behind him, you have a proper threat. Like, I think it sets a lot of, like, things lined up that it gives 343 directions to move.
It also could set up a reason for us to release the Flood. Couldn't it? No, I guess because they're immune to they're immune to the Halo arrays, but maybe, I don't know.
I feel like you wouldn't want to risk them being consumed by the Flood, or we'll find out very quickly that was one of, I could easily see offensive bias audio logs covering things like, different tests he's performed on the Endless to find out that, no, they're immune to the Flood as well, they're immune to this, they're immune to that. It opens up that sort of thing. You could build a very good character of what offensive bias is. I'm imagining a bit cold and ruthless, because that just the vibe you get off the way it operated to take down Mendicant.
Well, he can also be this thing that he's not really an ally. He's like something you need to appease, like, okay, I'm going to align with you on some things. Other things I'm going to disagree with you on, but let's at least try to work together a little bit here and there.
It, once again, and I'm going to say it because I say it every Halo game that comes out now, it opens the door to bringing back Mendicant Bias, because they very much set up the fact that Mendicant Bias is here to be our friend, and offensive bias might not be, because the other Forerunner, the Grand Edict, does not sound like a friendly person, and we don't know what who the Criterion is, but I'm going to guess they're also not terribly friendly. You could have, like you said, that situation where offensive is not our friend, and maybe by default potentially our enemy. There's all sorts of things with that, but I can't get my hopes up about Mendicant coming back anymore. I have to let that one go a little bit. I've been disappointed too many times now.
Well, the other thing, I feel like at some point, who knows, but they got to wrap up some arc stories. So what's going to happen with the arc? Are we going to get a Halo Wars 3, Spirit of Fire, all that other stuff? Like, at some point that's going to come back, because we had talked about maybe that folding into this game, and the only part that folds into this game is the Banish and Atriox, not anything specific with the arc. But the arc needs to be resolved, or at least brought back into the larger universe somehow. Yeah,
I think there's a lot to see where it goes. Like, I think we need to wait and see. The next thing that will give us a clue will be, what is 343's roadmap ahead? Like, is it what we assume it's going to be, and they're going to add, like, DLC islands or whatever? Will they throw in a different campaign altogether? Could we get something else entirely? So I think that'll be the next thing, is we need to see probably what the Rubicon protocol is, and if they drop us any clues in there. And then hopefully by next summer we'll get some hints as to maybe, I think Oren's probably onto something with his idea that, like, a yearly story DLC similar to how Destiny do it might, like, make sense. So
one more thought quick before we wrap it up, because I know we're so long. What if, because we've been doing the Halo thing for a long time, not only the game Halo, but the threat of the Halo, and it's this looming thing. Maybe they're bringing in the Endless as maybe the Halo isn't, like, just kind of taking that out of the equation for a little while. So, like, the firing of the Halo isn't going to be the big bad anymore. Now it's going to be whatever this is, if that makes sense.
It's possible. I'd be curious to see. I think like people thinking that the Halo is still the threat, but in the hands of people that are immune to it is probably the way it will go. Like, I think that might be like the fear, but I would be curious to see your idea of a Halo game where the Halo is no longer a thing could be interesting. Like, what is the Halo universe without the Halo?
Well, the Halo could still exist, but like the firing of the Halo is no longer the specific threat because that's been looming over the entire universe up until this point. So maybe bringing in the Endless is a way to kind of spin that or take that out of the equation, at least for a little while.
Yeah, I'm reserving judgment for now because I'm not entirely sure how I feel about the Endless. Like, I think there's potential, but until I see some work or some show for it, I am undecided right now about them as an enemy or an addition to the universe. So hopefully we get something, but right, have we pretty much covered everything?
I think so, as much as we can for now, until we dive into mission debrief. I feel like that'll be the deep dive on everything.
I dread to see how long this episode comes out to after the edit. For reference of the listener, we're currently sitting at 2 hours and 36 minutes, so check your final cut to see how much I shaved out of this in the edit. Alright guys, I think seriously that will do us for now. Like we said before, we will be lining up future Infinite Impressions episodes. We will cover things like the audio logs, certain mysterious ring-shaped artifacts, and all other aspects of Halo Infinite. And also keep an eye out for the mission debrief episodes that will deep dive into mission by mission. So if you didn't get enough Halo Infinite in your almost 4 hours of spoiler episodes you'll have between the two of these, you will have a lot more coming your way soon. If you stuck it out to the very end, thank you very much for joining us, guys. You can find every episode of what we do over on the website. That's halopodcastevolve.com. You can also search for all your unique feeds there as well. Follow Halo Podcast Evolved on your podcast service of choice to get the full feed. Once again, special shout out to all of our patrons. You continue to help us do what we do and make everything possible. Head over to patreon.com/Halo Podcast Evolved to learn more. And finally, you could leave us a voicemail. So if you have any thoughts about this episode, it's a long one, or the legendary ending, you can give us a call on 205 Evolved. That's 205-386-5833. If they are Halo Infinite related, we will read them out on one of the later Infinite Impressions. I'd imagine that's a good opportunity for an episode where we take community feedback on the campaign. I will have to go and harass Oren after this about squeezing that one into the schedule somewhere. Okay, with that, I have been your host Aaron, and until next time, also have a happy new year. Evolved.
Evolved.